Welcome to the Regular People Podcast. I'm Wade Allen, and today I'm joined by Brad Allen. Today my brother is actually on the podcast. Or did you want to be anonymous?
I would like to be anonymous.
Legitimately?
No.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's too late for that. So I obviously I know Brad decently.
As human beings, not so much.
Right.
As individuals who are bodies on a planet, very much.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, as I like to start a lot of the podcasts, so the listeners have an idea of who you are, what you're like, where you're coming from, and your perspective on things. Do you want to give a brief, I don't know, bio or
Sure.
course of evolution of your life?
So I'm a troll person from the bridges of yore. No, I don't know. I'm a 28-year-old male who has no course of action in their life and takes them and goes wherever the wind decides. Today the wind pointed towards a podcast.
Yeah.
My perspective is that no one should have perspectives. And
Okay. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll allow it.
no, I don't know. Well, first of all, I don't know how to take myself seriously or anyone else. So I think
that's fine.
a big perspective of mine is just to be goofy and not take many things seriously. So I'd never like to take things too seriously, which I think kind of shapes how I live my life and how I think most people around me should, or how I perceive them to live their lives. I take most things with some humor.
Yeah, that's good to think of everything as kind of at least have some sort of humor about things. Like maybe not everything is 100% a joke, but everything is at least a little bit a joke.
Yeah, if you take everything seriously, there's no room for joy in life.
Yeah, I guess like you can either look at life as generally speaking anyway, like as a comedy or tragedy. The choice is yours.
I like a nice tragedy 90% of the time, and then it hits into a real nice dark comedy.
Yeah.
Which I think is how everybody probably lives their lives, actually.
As a dark comedy? Or
yeah,
in that
I would
ratio,
say so.
You mean?
If you look at people's lives, their tragedies become, you laugh at them at the end. But for a good 90% of it, it's tragic, whatever people are going through. But you have to look back and just laugh, and the more tragedy happens, the funnier it tends to be.
Yeah, it's too easy to get stuck in your own mindset and take everything that's happening in your life as like the most important thing, the only thing that matters, when that's just not true.
Yeah, there's always the what is it in Perks of a Wallflower? There's that quote that's it's a known quote, but in that book they say it in a different way. But it's the kids are always starving in Africa. It doesn't negate the fact that you're going through something, but at the same time, there's always something worse, and there's always something better than whatever you're going through. So at the end of the day, you just kind of have to like laugh about whatever you perceive your life to be, and move on.
Yeah. So the topics we want to talk about today, I feel like, that already is the first one, the getting into it. Anyway, these are the ones you were wanting to talk about, though. So we got reality and perspective. We got American true crime.
Big fan. More like I don't know as much about it, but I love consuming it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I know a decent amount from.
So does Adrian.
From consumption.
The true crime shows and documentaries and stuff. So yeah, we can talk about that. There's also dark tourism. And actually, I don't know how many of these topics we can get to because there's like 7 of them. But yeah, Hollywood lore, lucid dreaming, and astral projection. That one's curious to me. Conspiracy theories, modern day nationalism, religion, and brainwashing, and influencers / media in each generation. So we can probably just go through that list in order.
Yeah. When I sent it, there's a lot of different. There's like 7 of them. But in my head, I thought they transitioned kind of into each other. So
in that order?
No, maybe not in that order per se, but it was kind of like I'm very curious about reality and perception. And in my head, like true crime comes in that because the people in those tragedies are either the survivors have to rationalize the fact that somebody was murdered in front of, like, in their lives, or the person doing the murder, their reality is that they're good in some way, which is strange.
Oh, yeah.
So like in my head, like all those things they all root in in perception and reality.
Yeah, it's like nobody thinks they're the villain. Like,
yeah.
You're the hero of your own story, no matter, even if you're a serial killer. Yeah. Somehow.
For survival aspect, like I don't think the human mind can make yourself into a villain. unless you want to be the best villain. And like the people who are like the villain in their own head, I think they look at themselves as the best villain.
Or like they're justified in being a villain. Like
Yeah.
the world has wronged them, so they're going to do it back to the world. So
Yeah. So it's
even in a way, it's still like they're more anti-hero or something, or more like giving the world justice than they are actually being evil for evil's sake.
Yeah. Which is why I think it's so crazy how, like your reality shifts your perspective, or your perspective shifts your reality.
Yeah. So when you said people shouldn't have perspectives, what do you mean by that? Like, can you even go without a perspective?
You can't. But in an ideal world, I don't think we would all have one common perspective in one common reality.
Yeah.
So like I would like to not have any strong opinions on anything. That would be fantastic. But like we do, because our world is moved around us and we move with the world, and things happen, and then it creates opinions and perspectives in our mind, and then our reality shifts constantly as we grow older.
So then the way that you're thinking of opinion is that like an opinion is necessarily just fundamentally different from like facts. Are there not opinions that can be more true than others? Maybe not like necessarily a conclusively right opinion, but like, wouldn't you say that people can have opinions that are divorced from reality entirely and aren't are crazy like opinions? So then you want to have no opinion at all, ideally.
Yeah, I mean, if the world worked perfectly, there'd be no need for opinion. I mean, this is abstract idea. But if the world worked, you wouldn't need opinion, because there'd be no right, wrong, yes, no. It would be just one thought, one common.
But couldn't that one thought, even if like everybody in the world agreed on a mutual story, wouldn't that story still necessarily kind of entail like what is good and what is bad?
I mean, this is all literally just like so abstract, because in like from what I'm saying is like this is not possible or logical, because you would if without opinion there would be need for good or bad, because you wouldn't know what good or bad are. It would just be whatever is right. Just acceptance of everything. And everyone around you is in the same boat as that, and somehow like the energy would just create a good or bad. I mean, good or bad are just words we made up. Yeah.
Well, to me, this sounds like a world without consciousness. Like,
yeah, let's do that.
Where there's only objects that
would inanimate. That's my ideal world. No consciousness. There's a lot of anxiety that comes with consciousness.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pain.
Life is suffering.
Let's just leave consciousness at the doorstep and revert back to.
So then, if you could turn the universe off, you would choose to?
Oh, I think everyone would.
You think so?
No? Like turn up just no universe.
I mean, either just no universe, or like all of the experience is just gone. So the universe only has, inanimate objects in it. So it's essentially the same thing. There's nobody there to observe it.
No one would know if a tree falls in a forest. Does it make a sound? It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, after you turn that switch off, then really it doesn't matter whatsoever. But you'd still have that, like, the few moments where you have to decide that you're just about to annihilate everything.
Yes, I would definitely do the snap, but with both hands, like a Thanos. 100%.
Oh, double Thanos snap.
not half the population, all of it.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
No, all of it without consciousness. No, consciousness are important, but at the same time, it's interesting to think what's the purpose of it.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, having an opinion, having something like a value judgment of a thing, the only way to do that is if you have a goal. And I feel like just by being a living creature, you necessarily have goals. There's no way to get around it. Like, you at least have the goal of not dying. So then there are some things that are good in the if your goal is to not die, and some things that are bad. I feel like in a world where everybody was completely honest with themselves and open to evidence and logic in like a consistent way, maybe we could reach, like, we could all just realize, like, okay, we all want to survive, so these are the things that are good and bad for that. We all want to be happy, these are the things that are good and bad for that. I feel like there is a way that you could come to a consensus on things, realize that like this thing isn't actually good for your survival or good for your happiness, but you're doing it anyway because you don't realize that it's bad for you.
Yeah. Kind of, so maybe instead I revert my opinion. Instead of no consciousness, maybe just in pure enlightenment. Right. 100% enlightenment actually would be the actual proper step.
Yeah.
For 100% of the population. No snapping, no murder, just life for everybody, but 100% enlightenment.
Yeah, everybody needs to reach nirvana. Everybody needs to do like LSD at the same time or something.
There's a thought.
Yeah, I don't know if that would even, it would get you like percentage there, but it wouldn't accomplish it.
Yeah.
So reality and perspective, how much of it do you think comes down to you first? I don't know which comes first, or maybe it's a ever continuing cycle, but say like you form a perspective on the world, and then once you have that going, that basically shapes how reality appears to you. And then even if reality could be interpreted 100 different ways, the fact that you before this moment have decided, maybe subconsciously in your head, that life is a tragedy, you'll just automatically interpret things as worse than maybe they actually are.
Yes.
And then so like basically your idea of the whole world is being shaped, and everything that's happening in your conscious experience is being shaped by your perspective that you've built up to that point.
Yeah, I would say it would be, maybe there's a survival aspect. Say you're like a baby. There's a survival aspect that is now your reality is just to survive.
Yeah.
It's simple. But once you get like the core survival pyramid, what is it, like food, safety, all those things, then I think then your experiences come into play that shape your perspectives, that then reality is reality. I'm sure there's one reality. It's in like the name. Apparently by definition there has to be one reality. But I think it's not how we turn reality into something. It's how we look at reality, and how like we let our perspectives change our reality. Right. It kind of like goes into all of like that is, and now you're living your life. Yeah, say it's a tragedy. You're going around being, and that's what people tell you all the time when like self-help books always say, shape your mind, shape your world, right. Things like that.
You just somehow start looking at life differently, and then it'll actually feel different to you.
Right.
If you start having more positive outlook, then that just kind of fixes your problems, just to a degree anyway.
Yeah, maybe that works. Maybe I have not tried that.
I mean, I feel like the hard thing is actually just doing that in the first place, like getting your brain to switch perspectives. You can't just like say, okay, I'm going to be happy now.
Yeah. But it's different because I feel like everyone's reality gets shaped. They shape it themselves based on all their past experiences. So even say you telling yourself to be happy would be different than me telling myself to be happy.
Right.
Because our happiness levels would be different based on whatever our experiences are.
Yeah.
So like, it's crazy how the billion people living in the world, all have a different reality, but yet we're all pretending to have one.
Right.
But we're all walking around thinking completely different things and thinking completely different rights and wrongs, because our reality is not one right, one wrong. It's whatever we decided was how we wanted to live.
Yeah. Yeah, like whatever the objective reality may be, we aren't experiencing it. And then our subjective realities that we're experiencing are different from each other. Like our epistemologies are different to each other too. Like what we perceive as being true about the universe. You know, somebody might think that the election was stolen. Right. Legitimately, like it was stolen, and somebody might think that's a nonsense, and they both are equally convinced that is like the real truth of the world.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I feel like we come from this place of no information about the before and the after of like humanity, so we don't know, or maybe not humanity, but existence. Yeah. So we don't know the before and the after as a concrete fact. So we as humans are left with if you think about like no important concrete facts that we should have, or that we, as curious minds with consciousness and like all these other evolving traits, we should have those yeses and those nos in our heads, but we don't. So how do we shape a reality? If we don't have like the core of our reality in our minds, reality can be whatever it is. Like you could say the election was stolen. You could say it's not. If you think about it from like a deep point of like what, we're also sponsored by dogs. But no, if you think about like reality as, if we don't know what reality is, how are we to know what our own reality is?
Which is why I think science is so important, because I feel like that's the only way of actually coming to at least a approximation, the closest you can get to understanding objective reality is by testing it and making experiments and seeing if your hypothesis is right or wrong. But that what you were saying before reminded me of a topic that I've been thinking about lately, is like how we don't really know certain like facts, and especially there's like a time bubble of however many years, maybe a few hundred years, kind of always just following us, where you can't really even trust things that supposedly happened hundreds of years ago. How do you really know that they happened? Because now the best you've got is somebody wrote it in a book that it happened. But like, how can you trust that they were actually telling the truth, or they maybe weren't outright lying, but like they were just incorrect. They thought it happened, but it didn't.
Right.
So it kind of comes like, well, I'm worried that it comes down to what you think is true about the world really just lies deeper in what you want to be true about the world. So like, if you like something, or if it meshes with your currently existing perspective, you're likely to think it's true without, much going deeper into it to see if it actually is.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like, as far as like textbooks go, or like history and stuff like that. It's interesting how there is one fact with things, like how things transpired. There's one fact. But it's interesting how our realities are shaped by what we are taught and what's learned and whatnot. Like we as a civilization all agree that Hitler was bad.
Well, not all.
Okay, not all. All right, there's some people who don't. But like, imagine if a whole country was taught that he was right.
Apparently, Hitler is talked about very fondly in Saudi Arabian newspapers.
Okay, so say that that's what that's taught in their school. The same as like how the U.S. schools are taught that like we were the best in our country, deserved the land that it stole, and stuff like, and blah blah blah. We're taught that just recently. Like, I feel like recently in the last maybe 50 years, there's been like more of a spike of like questioning that reality, because it wasn't the reality. We created that reality. Our founding fathers created that for nationalism, to be like, we need people under our belts, but we're murderers. How do we make people trust us if we're murderers? Oh, we did the right thing, which is like interesting how you can create fake realities in the same world just based on like, and the events happened, they transpired, whatever it was.
It's just not the whole truth.
Yeah, because there's science that we can see fossils, we can see we can see fields that have been blown up in wars and things like that, and bodies and whatnot. So we can see those like different. You can create a different reality if you can convince people that reality is what they want to have as their own. Yeah,
and like how much of each history book is objective fact and how much is opinion written in by the people who
like whatever money was in whatever pocket,
or
creating, or not even money, but just like like as far as like nationalism goes, like you need a country behind you. If your country is
or like, even it doesn't have to be an explicit motivation to forge history to your liking. It could just be that since you are a U.S. citizen and you're writing a textbook for U.S. history, you kind of just have a inherent bias to not want to be a bad guy, so that you kind of whitewash your history books subconsciously.
But also the same as, because our country was like rooted on patriotism, like like being heroes and whatnot. Like even as far as like all of the Marvel things, like those came from one country in particular. Like they came from us during like World War I and II to create like as propaganda. Like that's
like Captain America fighting Hitler.
Like that's I mean, in our minds, like that is right, I think, as far as the world concerns. Like Hitler was wrong, but like as far as in our minds, like that was created to push forth those ideas even farther. So what would happen if somebody did that in more of a malice type of way, like what with the Native Americans and whatnot, where it was like clearly the other opinions that we all grew up with are now wrong, and they always were, because like we were raised on history books and textbooks that said that like the colonials were in the right.
Yeah,
and then you look at it for 2 seconds
merrily around a campfire at Thanksgiving to share goods,
and you get like
everybody loved each other.
Anything tells you otherwise. You talk to one other person, like, hey, what happened there? And they'd be like, oh, I actually looked that up. I didn't listen to the history book. And you're told that, but like, what happens when that information is not like presented to you? What is your reality? Could be anything. Yeah,
and that's a good point that you just mentioned briefly. It's not even that you have to have lies presented to you or inaccuracies presented to you. It could just be that you didn't have the truth presented to you at all. So like you just there's an omission in what you learned, or what you like in history class. They don't have to say that like Christopher Columbus was a good dude. They could just not talk about the bad things he did, and then it makes him seem by default like he was a good dude.
Yeah, if they just talk about
they just talk about his like accomplishments, like
he was a conquest or conquistador or whatever. Conquistador who's just like looking for new land. He's great. Like
like he was responsible for bringing coffee beans to Europe.
I mean, it's similar to how like what like not Britain. I was thinking Berlin, but like Germany, how they teach about World War II. Like they are very, at least from what I've heard. I have not gone through the curriculum in
Right.
Germany.
You're not
obviously.
a German student.
No, but like from like Reddit, I guess. Like, but things like that, they always talk about how like Germany is very open about talking about how bad World War II was and how like that was not like what they as Germans now put their foot behind. Whereas America was like, we're never gonna do that. We're never gonna be like, yeah, like it's so hard for us to admit that we're in the wrong for anything. Whereas other places, maybe it's just having like a little bit of like a un-American bias where I think America's just faulty for a lot of things.
Right.
But they do love to present themselves as the heroes and the saviors of the world. Where it's like you could look at things more realistically and realize that there's been some black and white areas.
Yeah. There's been some gray in there. It's not all just roses and smiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the middle of like World War II too, like when the U.S. is normally depicted as some grand heroes, like got internment camps for Japanese people.
Right. But that's brushed over like I mean not completely, but
I mean, I did learn about that in high school, but it's definitely like a side topic.
Yeah, it's like the little statement underneath a picture.
Right.
Here's a picture of an internment camp. Oh, by the way, this is, and there's a little blurb at the bottom.
It's like you learn about D-Day for a whole week.
Yeah.
And then you learn about the Japanese internment camp for like 5 minutes.
Oh, by the way, this is a big deal. But anyway, moving on. Like,
yeah.
And it's still like not talked about. Like those, like it's still not like talked about. Like that was fairly recent in terms of U.S. history, or as far as like world history goes. And like those effects still linger in like communities. Yeah. Like the things that the U.S. has done linger because like they don't realize that like right after World War II was like this huge growth period for like all the white ex-soldiers and whatnot, and then like everybody else got pushed aside. So it's like crazy to think that was 70 years ago or whatever, but it's still like those, like that was 2-3 generations. That's not that much.
Yeah.
Anyway, World War I and II. Crazy times.
Yeah, definitely the most talked about topics in history classes for sure. But then I don't know, I wonder like if there's some ratio to be met in a history class of like how much you want the students to feel bad and how much you want them to feel like, I don't know, good about where they live. I mean, I feel like it'd probably be a bad idea to go like to the far other extreme of just trying to teach like your country's a piece of shit. Like you are the villains in the world. Right. Like you are awful. Like repent now. Like
imagine.
You've got to strike some balance of like we did good things and we did bad things.
You get the opposite of a terrorist organization forming. Would that be just like?
Well, I mean, I don't know, because maybe you got some fear
national
that
nihilists.
You're growing a bunch of people who completely hate their country, and then
the whole country, everyone wants to leave.
Yeah. You just have like a mass, like everybody just moves to Sweden.
Yeah, but like nothing like physically bad happened to them. Like they just learned information. Yeah. They're like, actually, I don't like it. I don't know why. They're like, actually, school was fine. Yeah. We learned that we were really bad a while ago. Countries are like, so you're not a refugee? No. We just like learned information that we don't like.
Yeah.
They're like, please leave.
That's probably, I guess, unrealistic to expect. I'm sure most people's reaction to learning realistic history education would be to want to improve the country rather than just flee it. That's one thing that comes up in like video games a lot that's always a little bit annoying, is like if you've got a video game community who are complaining about the state of the game, it's like bad right now, whatever. There's a whole group of people who are like, if you don't like playing it, just like leave, just stop playing it.
Oh, right.
And there's the other half. It's like, well, I mean, we could try to improve it by giving our criticism to the developers. Like,
right.
Do you just give up on something and leave just because you don't like it, or? Like,
that's the big Star Wars problem.
Right.
That's like the whole fan base in Star Wars. Like everyone, you're a Star Wars fan and you hate Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Like that's like well known. Like everyone who loves Star Wars hates Star Wars just as much as they love it.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, at what point do you stop being a fan and just decide that you only hate it?
Right. And I feel like that's really how it goes with any fandom or anything that you could like. The more you like it, your hatred for it grows in proportion to it. Because the more attention and time you spend on that thing, the more of its flaws you notice.
Right.
Like Game of Thrones, I love it so much, but I hate it so much.
Well, that's...
And now I hate it more than I love it.
Everyone should hate, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just like things in general. You just... Like reading the Harry Potter books like 5 times in a row, it's like, oh, I didn't notice that before. That seems like a J.K. Rowling didn't think of that. It's a plot hole there. Like first time you read it, it's all magic and chanting. You love it. Round 10, it's like, oh, there are things that could have been done better. But it's because you're such an expert on it now. Like,
I don't know. I'm on around 25, maybe. It's never lingered from perfect.
yeah,
But that's its own topic for a different day, a different week.
I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on the topic of reality and perspective?
I mean, no, I think that might just be an overall
Right,
arching.
it'll come
That's
back
always
into,
on my mind.
into everything.
Yeah, that.
I wanted to say too that I feel like it's kind of a cyclical effect. This happens like with everything. It seems like there's either a downward spiral or an upward spiral. If you, for whatever course of events happen, shapes your perspective on the world in, say, a negative way, and you interpret things poorly because of that afterwards, everything that happens has a negative tinge to it just because that's your disposition now. That's going to just keep on adding up over the years.
Oh, yeah.
And you're just going to get to the point where like life just sucks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily suck. It's just that you've been making things worse in your mind for 10 straight years. And then it's the opposite way too, where like you can get those rose-tinted glasses and have this false perspective on reality where it's better than it actually is because you've been doing that to yourself this whole time.
That's interesting to think about because when you say the first thing about how when things go bad, they get worse, and then you view things as worse, even if
Right.
they could be mundane and regular. It's kind of, in my mind, like the villain tragedy. Like you see that with, like, speaking of Star Wars, like the Darth Vader Anakin story. Like it's like worse gets worse gets worse.
Right.
Here's this tragedy of somebody who's fine. Or like Joker, per se, like the movie, like the one that just came out with like Joaquin Phoenix. It's not, no one is necessarily like, I mean, he had like some dark things happen to him, but I'm thinking like the talk show scene with was it Robert De Niro?
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like he's just talking, like bantering with him.
Yeah.
But Joaquin Phoenix's Joker has come from this place of just darkness. So those jokes are like just like stabs like to him. So it's like he's gotten to this point where he's this villain now because his reality has been shifted.
Right.
Which is like interesting to think about the other.
It's a really loud motorcycle.
But it's interesting to think about the other aspect of that is the because you see the villain one play out a lot more than you see the naive delusional play out, because in a good way per se, because that naive delusion is just as dangerous of living your life like as a narcissist. Essentially, you're living your life, things are perfect, and they're only going to be more perfect for you. Right.
I feel like to like well-functioning human, going down either path is detrimental to you and other people.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like in media you often see the negative one more. Yeah.
That one's a little bit more. It's easier to like transpire and to showcase and to maybe relate with, because I think everybody naturally is a little bit more down on themselves. Yeah. So you can relate with the villain a little bit more because you can see how you can trickle into that. Whereas the other one I think is less experience based and more of a delusion base. Whereas I think the negative one is more experiences, kind of like if traumatic experiences happen to you over and over again, those things are harder to shake off than say somebody compliments you over and over again. So now you've got this grandiose idea of your ego. Yeah. That a lot of people don't normally let get to them as much as bullying or, I don't know, hate crimes and like slurs coming at them.
Yeah, and I guess both can happen at the same time because your perspective can be, more nuanced and fragmented than just a simple thing. Like you could simultaneously be getting in a downward spiral of how you perceive the world and an upward spiral of how you perceive your own like importance or confidence or like ego. Like you could just be thinking like you're smarter than everyone else in the world more and more every day, and the world is shit, and like you're the only one who's good. Like that kind of thing happens. Yeah. So it's like both things happening at once.
And that is like the ultimate villain. Yeah. Like, that is like what is it? Like the Richard Ramirez, like satanic killer who thinks like I'm ridding the world of people because I'm the best.
I'm the only one who's strong enough to do it. Yeah. I see the world for what it is and no one else does. Yeah.
Right. Which I think that combo of the two is probably like that person is a psychopath.
Yeah, that's probably the most dangerous, because if you have somebody who is completely negative on their outlook on the world and their own self-esteem, they probably don't have enough confidence to even do anything, really. Right. So they're not going to like be a school shooter because they hate themselves too much to get out of their apartment or whatever. Or like they're more likely to kill themselves than kill anyone else.
Because they view themselves as equally bad because the world is just bad and they're part of that world. But then you get the one who has the grandiose ego, who also thinks the world is bad and they're the best. Right. Like that is the serial killer. That is the school shooter. Yeah. Whose motives weren't like to create chaos or to like kill themselves afterwards. It's to like wrong or make rights for the wrongs that they had in their world. I don't know.
Yeah. There's this psychology type called the dark triad. It's like a 3 traits, 3 psychological like dimensions that if appearing together, it's like a very strong combo to be a serial killer.
Okay.
Or to be like maybe not exactly a serial killer, but maybe like a serial exploiter of people, or CEO, or like that kind of like person who takes advantage of other people.
Jeffrey Bezos, born in what's the song? Born in 1964. Jeffrey Bezos,
CEO, entrepreneur, born in 1964. Yeah. But what is it? The 3. It's Machiavellianism. I can't even say that word. Machiavellianism.
What is that? I'm not brushed up on my
Machiavellianism.
Words
The Prince by what's his name? Machiavelli. It's like basically using people as instruments. Using people as tools in your game.
So like zero empathy.
Yeah, and then there's psychopathy, which is the zero empathy part. And then there's
so manipulation and then zero empathy, basically.
Right. And then the third one is
a high IQ or something.
No, what is it?
Because in my head,
I don't want to say 2 of the 3 only.
When you were saying it in my head, I was thinking it would have to be like to be.
Oh, it's narcissism.
Narcissism, okay.
So it's narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism.
Right.
So yeah, thinking you are important and maybe the only important one. Viewing other people as tools, and also not having any emotion.
Right.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Like if I had those 3, I would probably just kill people because why not, right? Like in your head, you'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
Like these people are pawns.
Right. And then that the dark triad combo appears like, I don't know the exact numbers. This is wrong. It's just, guesstimate. It's something like 6 times more often in men than in women.
Right.
And then like everybody has some amount of those things. Like if it was a continuum of like 0% to 100%, most people are probably like they got a few percentage of those things.
Yeah.
Like you're a little bit unempathetic. You're a little bit
whatever. Everybody has a little bit.
But if you're like high percentage of all 3 of those things, then you're most likely to be the type of person who ends up being a serial killer. Like if you look through all serial killers, they've got these traits.
High metachlorine count.
Yeah.
That's what it is, actually.
Yeah,
it's all of the Star Wars saga was a metaphor for serial killers. Anakin is actually Ted Bundy.
Yeah, they needed somebody who had the aptitude to be the world's best serial killer, and then for some reason choose not to be.
Right. Oh no, that doesn't make sense.
Well, if the midichlorians are, because they're seeking out somebody with lots of midichlorians.
That's what they should call it, actually. Is that in like a medical field? If you see somebody with all 3 of those, they just say like your metachlorine count is really high. So that person in their mind, they're like, oh, I knew it. I'm the fucking best.
I'm a Jedi Master.
And then they just start killing people with a lightsaber.
Yeah. Oh man, I was just thinking earlier today about how horrible the Star Wars, the last one is, and everybody knows this, and I've said it many times, even on this podcast. But one thing I specifically haven't said is they change the rules of the universe, like as each movie goes, and then what happens is the new rules actually just kind of make pointless everything else that happened. For instance, the Force healing, if that actually existed, Anakin never needed to go to the dark side to save Padme. He could have just used Force healing.
Right. Well, the dark side is more sexy. Everybody knows that.
Right.
Force healing is a poor man's sport. But
or like, yeah, you can only Force heal if you're a good person. So like, no,
Anakin is a good person. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Darth Vader, though, not sure about him. No, he's still good. I'm convinced. That's my reality, and I will not budge. Anakin and Darth Vader are good people to their core. Maybe not in the actions they present to the world. Maybe not blowing up Alderaan, but they're good.
This reminds me of a thing that I was seeing the other day. Apparently, there's this cartoonist who makes pro-Trump cartoons, except in several of his cartoons, he draws Trump into the position of like Darth Vader or like Emperor Palpatine. And then the people who, aren't cheering these on are thinking like, wait a minute, do you not realize like who this character is a villain?
Yeah.
And you're saying that the guy you love is playing this role. But then everybody who's pro-Trump is like, oh, this is such like, yeah, like this is exactly expressing what we're feeling and why Trump is so good.
Like he's Darth Sidious. You can wait.
Yeah, like the one that I just saw was Trump as Don Quixote. And the story of that is Don Quixote like wants to be a knight, and he thinks he's saving everyone, but it turns out he's just fucking everything up.
Oh.
And then the end of the story is he just goes home because he's been ruining things, and what he's been talking about isn't actually real.
That adds up.
And like it makes me think this is so perfect that the cartoonist must actually be anti-Trump.
Yeah, I think,
and he's just playing people who think this is pro-Trump propaganda.
Yeah, I think when I first learned the information of pro-Trump cartoonists, I thought, no, I don't like him. But now I think I like him.
It's either it's okay. This is like this phenomenon where if you get so satirical enough, people can't tell if you're being genuine.
Mm.
Like if I went on Reddit onto like the conservative subreddit and just said something so like I was trying to mock them so hard,
Right.
They might not actually understand that I'm mocking them anymore. They might think I'm just one of them. So I think maybe that's what's happened here. Except
people just bought it.
Yeah, people like maybe he made one
and
and then a bunch of pro-Trumpists made it or like shared it around, and he was like, I wasn't expecting that. But
that might be what happened.
It seems so ridiculously ironic that I don't know how he could be making these cartoons thinking that it makes sense the way he thinks it makes sense.
Right. He's definitely 1/3 perfect serial killer. He manipulates people very well. He's got that down. He's 100%.
Yeah, I wish I remember the guy's name, but I'm sure if you type in like Don Quixote Trump cartoon, it'll probably be like the only thing that comes up.
I've typed that in a few times. I've not gotten any results though.
Yeah. So yeah, I was talking with the Dark Triad. So maybe that's a good place to move on to American true crime.
Oh yeah, I mean we've dabbled already.
Right. That's true.
As I said, I'm not like much of I don't consider myself an expert on true crime, but it's a topic that I am very fascinated with, and I think I research look up more than most things. It's what I spend my time at night looking up online,
like serial killers and like
why they did, how they
how exactly they dismember the body.
How'd they get away with it
with only a butter knife?
Yeah, I just named the tools in my kitchen. Like, how would you kill someone hypothetically with a pot, a pan, and 2 oven mitts? You can get away with it.
Yeah, and then you find a WikiHow and you just follow the steps.
There's pictures and everything by the guy. It's Trump.
Yeah, they're not even cartoon pictures. They're just like literal, just screenshots.
It's a video.
Pictures of,
like, is this real?
So this is the first person I killed using this method. I had to do it 3 more times to make sure it works.
Right.
Yeah. Although, if you want to know some interesting details about how to dispose of a body, which maybe isn't good information.
I think I've learned as much as I need to from Breaking Bad and Dexter. I think those. Yeah.
Although I wonder how realistic it is for like Breaking Bad style to just buy like an entire gallon's worth of like hydrofluoric acid.
Well, you have to measure yourself in it first in the store. You have to go to Home Depot and put yourself in a bucket.
Like where exactly do you buy a barrel of hydrofluoric acid, and how do you do that without like getting on a watch list?
Right. I mean, they did. I feel like most of those things they kind of just overlooked. Like, he's a high school science teacher.
He gets tons of hydrofluoric acid.
Yeah, he can make bombs. Like whatever they need. Yeah. They're just like, he's got it. But like, meanwhile, they don't order those. Like, it's high school science. But he had a lot of like those weird things. Although I think in that particular episode, Jesse was the one who had to go find it.
Yeah.
And he was like having a hard time finding it, as one would probably do, as just like the local drug dealer.
Yeah. And they like briefly talk about, there's this one scene where Walter White is just like buying a new rake or something, and then he sees this method, like obvious method from what he's buying all this stuff to make meth, and he like tells him in the parking lot, like, don't buy all your stuff at one place, you have to spread out your purchases. But they never actually like show those steps in Breaking Bad, like them going to buy all these individually. Like,
right.
It must have taken so much time, every single meth cook, especially when you're making like 40 pounds of meth
in Albuquerque, New Mexico,
to go to every single grocery store and hardware store within like 30 miles to buy out all of their pseudoephedrine. Right. Like,
well, he's a science teacher. He just shows them his school ID. They're like, oh, we get it. We just had another guy come in here for 40 pounds of pseudoephedrine.
Yeah.
Hold on, we're gonna need it so weak. It's backstocked.
Okay, but apparently these are my tips for how to kill people.
Okay. Here are some quick tips on how to kill people.
I mean, you got to dismember the body into lots of parts, but that's a no-brainer. And then what you want to do is, if you're going to bury them, make sure it's like a steep and small hole, because what you would be expecting typically is, a grave-size hole, long, 6 feet deep kind of thing. No, just cut them into lots of pieces and make this hole like, I don't know, basketball size and then just go down, like get an auger and then drill down in the ground and then stuff the pieces into the body. And then what you want to do is kill an animal and then put that animal carcass on top of the body, which that way, if the police dogs go looking for the body, they'll find this raccoon and then maybe assume that the dog was interested in the raccoon and that's all that's there. And maybe there's more raccoon. They're like, oh, whatever. Another thing to do is apparently the soles of feet are a good way to get identification of people, as well as like earlobes and fingertips and stuff. So what you want to do with those before burying them is coat them in yogurt, which will speed up bacteria growth and eat them away, make them decompose faster.
Oh. Which is why I never sleep with more than a couple ounces of yogurt on my feet at night.
Yeah, you don't want to do a yogurt bath. Bad idea.
Yeah, don't slither in a bed covered in yogurt.
Yeah, I'm sure that's somebody's thing.
It's bad. That's a lot of facts that I would not have known. And now I'm scared why you know them, but...
I mean, Reddit. I saw them on Reddit.
Oh, right. Oh, I have like illegal pro tips Reddit? Or...
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly where, but the information stuck with me because it was fascinating.
Yeah, things like that definitely stick. Like, I feel like the trauma from true crime information.
Yeah.
Something you're like, I never knew I needed this information. I don't need it, actually, but I have it, and I can never let it go.
Yeah.
I can forget my address many times, my phone number, but I will never forget how to get rid of a body now.
Yeah.
Like, that's for sure.
I wonder why, like, serial killers fascinate people so much, just generally. Like, is it just because... like, within humans, you have some sort of, like, impulse to murder, at least a little bit, and is it, like, living through somebody vicariously? Is it that?
Oh. No. I hope not.
Like in our ancient caveman days, we got lots of violence. Like, you have pent up violence that you want to, like, hit things. I mean,
we're
and,
a violent
and murder
species
things.
Just from the get-go.
So we're constrained in a civilization where we can't be recklessly violent.
Let us murder.
But in some small way, we wish we could be. So it's like a fascination around the people who actually go and do that kind of thing. Even though we never would, but it's like...
They're like the actors. Like,
your
like, I wish
reptile
I was
brain wants to do it. Like, imagine the joy of, killing someone or something like that.
Oh, wow. Well, not the joy. It is, but that's an interesting...
Yeah, maybe not the joy, but maybe like the feeling of power or something.
I've never thought about it like that. But it's interesting because if we do, like, kind of gravitate towards serial killers and... Yeah, serial killers and just maybe even brutal killers that only got, like, one, or cryptic killers.
Or like the mass shooters.
Like they're almost like little celebrities for a moment.
Yeah,
like
and they're like
Google them,
cult
we Google
followings.
There's people like go to their, like, write them love letters and stuff like that. Like, and it's not necessarily how they look. It's a lot of times just like what the crimes they did or like who.
Yeah, just the fact that this person killed like 60 people. You want to write them letters in prison.
Right. Who is it? There's a set of laws. It's like a New York serial killer. He did a bunch of shootings in like the 70s. But there's like laws set now. Son of Sam. He was did cryptic killings in like the 70s. Anyway, there's a set of laws set now called like the Son of Sam laws, where it's you can't profit off of. If you're a serial killer and say like somebody comes to you to write a book, like you can't take those profits, which is interesting because it's like that. If that law had to be created, there's such an interest to it, and like people want that information and they want to know more.
Yeah.
And why do they want to know more? Is it because they gravitate? I never thought it was because people wanted to kill. I always thought it's because it's interesting to see that downfall and that switch in reality, which is why I think like true crime relates so much to reality and perspective, because I'm not
understand how somebody could think a certain way, like how somebody could.
Right, something drove them to that point of madness, of severe madness, like whether that is mental illness coming in play and helping them out, but also experience, like because you can get somebody who is schizophrenic. That's not a murderer, but a lot of the times a murderer is schizophrenic, or is bipolar, or is severely depressed. But it's interesting to see how those things play into that mix with just traumatic experience and upbringing to create a reality where you are now a serial killer. Yeah,
like being schizophrenic isn't enough to make you a murderer.
No, not at all. Yeah. But it is more likely. It's more likely, and it's interesting to see because I think that is why I'm at least interested in serial killers and whatnot, because you see how they could have been normal. Yeah. Like there's little moments where you're like, they could have had a normal life if they had chosen to look at something just differently, or to react differently, or to be in a different place that wouldn't have triggered them. Or, I mean, a lot of times it's like sad upbringings, but even that, it's like, all right, if they would have just looked at that in a different light.
Yeah, I always wonder, like, what is it that makes makes that happen, because I mean, you could have somebody who has equally of a sad upbringing, like they had all the abuse that same person did,
Right.
but one person turns out to be a serial killer, the other person turns out to just be, depressed
Yeah.
and not a serial killer. Like, what is the difference in their lives or in their psyches that caused that to happen?
And we might not ever know, because it's so
Like,
deeply rooted in what we think is normal. So like that confession of like how this happened is never going to be an easy. You'd have to like survey people. Like you'd have to like make somebody. You'd have to create a serial killer
Yeah.
to see how that would trigger somebody. You'd have to have like 2 test subjects in a room, and both of them have like what would be a serial killer like quality,
Yeah.
and create a mass serial killer, and then create somebody who's normal in a room, in a test lab, and be like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what, oh yeah, last week when we said this about so and so, yeah, that really triggered them, and now they killed half the lab. Like then you'd know. You'd be like, okay, so it turns out that little bit of push really does it.
Yeah.
Because that's why it's interesting. It's all these little things. It's 20 some years, like, which is I think almost more interesting to read about like young serial killers, because that it's like, I mean, it's a lot more impulsive most of the time. It's not as planned out, but sometimes it is planned out, and it's interesting to see how their lives went so much more quickly in that direction.
Yeah, I wonder, do you think we have more of a fascination with like heroes or villains, or is it equal, I guess?
I would say villains.
Yeah.
I think so. With like our society, I mean, even as far as when I said earlier, like World War I and II and whatnot, those, we wouldn't have the heroes if we weren't so focused on taking down the villains.
Yeah.
I know it's like a simple way to say it, but a lot like heroes are so much more interesting when they have a villain that's on the same level as them. We give heroes so many more powers than the villains do. Most of the time, the villains are, I'm thinking like comic book movie wise, but the villains normally are way smarter, or like they have the leg up and they know more information.
Yeah.
The hero is always kind of fumbling through it and they don't get it right away.
Yeah, it's usually like the villain is objectively, or like should be more powerful, and then the heroes have to like use the power of friendship to over like
Yeah,
it's like one villain versus a group of like heroes. Even if
Yeah.
it's like a movie where there's the single protagonist like Iron Man or something, he still has his like friend with
Yeah.
him that's gonna help out, and like
or the society coming together and
Yeah, right.
cheering him on, and
Right.
he's like, "Oh, your hope made me lift this building off of me, and I can fly and punch him now."
yeah, and he's got that like halfway through the movie period of failure, and like the
Yeah.
villain doesn't have that period of failure.
No, the villain has a period of cockiness and ego, but
Yeah.
that's what takes him down more than the actual hero does.
I mean, I guess a villain usually has setbacks over the course of a story, because like otherwise they would have done the thing they want to do earlier. They keep on having these roadblocks that give the
Right.
hero enough time to
To train,
appear just in time
yeah,
and save the day. But yeah, I feel like as much as we might be interested in villains, and I think they generally are cooler just by being villains, I guess, I feel like they're not written well a lot of the time, because one thing that's just kind of tropey and annoying is making villains like evil just for the sake of being evil. Like
right.
they don't have a fleshed out or like detailed backstory that's actually like understandable and makes you realize like, oh, like that could be, I would do the same thing if I was in that situation.
I mean, I think that's less skill set on the writers and more strategy from executive, like whoever's in charge of pushing an agenda, if you will.
Like the story that the story is telling kind of thing.
Well, even or perspective in the world, because media shapes our perspective a lot too. And I mean, not to like keep looping it back to that,
Right.
but I would think it'd be more dangerous to show a villain, a
In an
very
empathetic way,
relatable villain.
yeah.
Because I would say that like the closest we've had to that is the Joker movie that came out.
Yeah.
Not to like reference it, but it was a decent job of showing like this trickle into like, or this downward spiral into villainy.
Yeah.
Which is hard. It's a hard line to cross, because you don't want to show empathy for somebody who is gonna kill parents of a child or whatever, like as far as like the Batman origin goes, or things like that, or create anarchy within a society. But it is also important to the journey of that villain, because that's just realistic.
Yeah.
The same as it's realistic for a hero to come from nothing or whatever,
Right.
because that's how it happens in modern day. Or I
Which-
don't know, like
This is a side topic because it's more about, but anyway, one thing that I notice about the hero story, it's like this, it's this paradox. It's self-contradictory, because you always have the zero to hero story where they come from humble roots, they come from nothing, but that gets completely contradicted within the same story, like every single time, by the special destiny thing. Like
Oh, right.
they come from nothing, but at the same time, like their real father is the king. It's like they
Right.
didn't come from nothing then. Like
Yeah.
Harry Potter comes from nothing because he's an orphan, but he's got magical powers,
Yeah.
and he's literally the chosen one. He did
Yeah.
not come from nothing.
Same with Star Wars, like Luke Skywalker is
Right.
He's just a nobody farm. What's he farm? Something moisture farmer. He farms moisture on Tatooine.
But no, he's
genius.
actually like the son of the most powerful Jedi in the
He's
universe.
also the chosen one.
Right.
What from Lord of the Rings? What's
Aragorn is like
He's
some
a
humble
simple knight rider.
Yeah, ranger.
Ranger.
But actually no, he's the king.
Yeah, he's always supposed to be the king,
Right.
and he's the only one. It's always that. He's
Yeah. Or like even like Frodo too. Like Frodo, he's just a simple hobbit, but he's got the one ring in his possession, like
right.
and it's been in his family history. Like there's always this. It almost seems sinister to me because it's trying to tell the story of you could be the hero, you could be Harry Potter, it could be anyone, while at the same time saying it's completely based on your genetics.
Yes, you could be Harry Potter, but
you'd have
Bezos
to not
your
be
father?
a Muggle. Yeah, right. The Muggle cannot be the protagonist in this story.
It's not gonna be a random person coming from some random place.
Yeah.
Except for in Ready Player One, they do a good job.
Do they?
Yeah. He kind of like comes from nowhere, and he just knows a lot of information.
Yeah. The book that I have had this happen the worst in was The Wheel of Time, which is a beloved fantasy series that's like 14 books long. I wanted to get into it, so I read the first book. And after I read the first book, I'm like, that book was one of the worst books I've read. It was so horrible. And one thing that really I hated about it was the main character had that, coming from nothing, humble story. And I mean, obviously his dad isn't his real dad. That's never the case. No. They always have a secret father.
Father's walking out.
Yeah, they always think their father's dead, and turns out their father either is alive and super powerful or is dead and super powerful. But anyway, he goes through 5/6 of the book as this bumbling, incompetent person who is really hard to like because he sucks at everything. And then when he finds out his special destiny, it like a flip switches, and he becomes without earning it at all, like the god of the universe. Basically, he becomes this overpowered, like just flying through the sky, doing magic stuff that he didn't actually learn. He just activated randomly. It was the stupidest, most unsatisfying thing. So that's like the distillation of what I'm talking about, is like trying to tell these two completely at odds themes in the book.
Yeah, come from nowhere, but you are everything, and you're what everyone has been waiting for.
Yeah, and
everybody knew about it, but not you, because you came from nowhere.
I just wish stories could tell one or the other. Like that'd be fine. It seems like it.
Well, I think they want everyone obviously to relate to the main character, but they also can't be like, well, it can't be anybody,
right?
Because you're the reader, you're lame. It can't be you. So this person has to have a lot of powers.
Yeah,
you can't have those, but you can pretend, and you can be him.
So back to American True Crime.
Oh yeah.
What is are some of your favorites? Are you watching things? Are you reading books? Are you?
Yeah, constantly. Yes. So I mean, one of my favorite books about is The Devil in the White City is phenomenal. It's about like the Chicago World Fair in like 1883 or something like that, 1893.
Yeah.
And then H.H. Holmes, like the America's first serial killer, who builds have you heard this story?
How could America's first serial killer be 1883? That's not believable. There was definitely a serial killer in 70s.
But not not
okay.
I mean, that's what he's like known for to be. Right. So it's like whatever the documentate. Like, I don't know. They gave it he's the first verified one on Twitter. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's got a blue check mark before anybody else did. Like, yeah, sure, there's some celebrities out there, but he's got one.
Yeah.
No, but he that book is fascinating because it's two separate stories. It's the architect and like the designer, I guess I would think you could say, about of the World's Fair, where like the Ferris wheel was invented or like showcased and whatnot. It's like the first World's Fair after the Eiffel Tower was showcased in France. So like Chicago gets it. Chicago is not a city. It's just like a collection of little towns and whatnot. Very small. It's just like kind of like a Midwest hub before you go anywhere else. But it's about like how this city, which is why it's called like the second city, because the fire of the same year, it like burnt down the whole city because they built it like on like a marsh, and they built all this wood really quickly because they needed to build a city to showcase, to sponsor, and to have like this World's Fair. It's like if the Olympics was happening, and they're like, "Oh shoot,
we don't actually have a location.
we're doing it in Nebraska. Like
Yeah.
people live here, but we need to build a city." I don't know
really
if
weird.
Nebraska has.
Why would
they
even
don't.
get chosen to be there in the first place if they weren't?
You sponsor for it, and I think New York was a couple years before, so like it just gets passed on. It was like an up and coming city per se, but they built this city within the course of a couple of years maybe, but they built it all with wood, or most of it in wood. And at the same time, it's a parallel story. This is an old book, so it's probably not relevant to talk about, but it's interesting. Around the same time, a serial killer is moving. I think he moved somewhere, New York maybe, to Chicago, and he like stole an identity of his somebody. He murdered somebody, stole his identity, worked in Chicago. He is building a house and keeps changing architects to build this house because he doesn't want them to know what he's building. He builds like a murder house essentially.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
Yeah. There's hallways within the walls.
Oh yeah.
There's like trap rooms. There's like little like yeah. Just run of the mill man, run of your mill Jeffrey Bezos mansion. You walk in, you never leave. Could you get the package at the door? Wrong door. It's a trap door to the basement where you just get stuck in a warehouse for Amazon. You have to work minimum wage the rest of your life. But no, it was like that. And then so what had happened was he was going through with all these murders because all these girls are coming for the World's Fair. It's a big deal. You go there, you can find work in all around the country. People come from all over to find workers to showcase their goods, their products, what have you. It's a huge thing. So these girls are coming from all over the place, leaving their hometowns. Like not much. It's around the time there's not much documentation of how people got to places.
They're dying of dysentery on the way.
Yeah, just right after the Oregon Trail epidemic, which doesn't get talked about nearly enough. That's very fascinating as well. That whole route.
Oh yeah, like in the two families who ate each other.
Yeah,
going through the.
There's like towns that are built around that now, and they commemorate them. There's like a lake in what is it, in like Truckee, California, and they're like, yeah, this is Dahmer Lake, and you're like, wait, you mean like were they the families that ate each other and where they got stuck? Like, yeah, it's a town now, and like everything's named after the family that was like the only family left after a cannibalistic couple days. Crazy. Now it's like, yeah, you come ski here. It's great. Change the name.
Ski on the corpses of these people.
Yeah, like guess how this town originated? That is how that town originated. Like it's crazy. But anyway, like this, like in Chicago around the time he creates this house. It's a murder house essentially. He's taking all these women in. I forgot what exactly happened. Somehow he got caught. Maybe ego. That's always how they get caught. Yeah. But anyway, the town finds out about it, and the town burns his house down. Meanwhile, the World's Fair is about to be happening, and they just built this town. He's in the same area, and they just built this new city of wood, and it's in this area that's like a marsh that's like kind of easy to catch fire, like this like grassy marsh is like where Chicago is built off of. They burn his house down. It like catches fire. In the book, it's like it's like implied it's related. It might not be, but they're in the same town, so like the whole town goes up in flames essentially. That they just built for like this World's Fair. And that's why it's called like the second city, Chicago, because it like it burned down. But it's interesting because it's like also rooted around the same time as like one of the most sadistic serial killers.
Wait, they burned his house down. Did they catch him too? Did he get
I believe they caught him. I forgot those details. The details of the city just took over after that point. I'm like, all right, they got him. I don't know.
Yeah,
I want to say they did, or he died. I mean, he's dead now, obviously.
Yeah. He died in the Amazon sweatshops.
Yeah, he went to Peru, and then he became friends with, in like 50 years, all of the ex-Nazis.
Is that actually what happened?
No. No, but I just know a bunch of ex-Nazis. Right. That's like the place to go.
Oh, yeah, and like
Argentina and Peru and shit like that.
Yeah. And you spend like 20 years living in Argentina, and you move to California.
Is that what happens?
Yeah.
And then you're just like, hi, I just...
You get like Argentina would like repatriatize you, so they would say you're an Argentinian.
Oh, okay.
And then
so you got to look
migrates to California as an Argentinian
with blonde hair and blue eyes. You got to look out for this.
Yeah.
And then in California, you're like, I'm just so tan from the beaches. You're like, what? Like, yeah. No, you're just in a shack in Argentina because you didn't have any money because you were just exiled.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Maybe one other reason that we're so fascinated with serial killers and generally like murderous people is that they, a lot of the times anyway, not all the time, some people just appear crazy, but a lot of the times they appear so normal. Like, you always have the people, like, after Jeffrey Dahmer is caught, his, like, neighbors, they get interviewed, and the people are like,
Oh yeah.
did you, like, know, like, have any suspicions? Like, no, like, he's like a completely normal guy.
Yeah.
It's like they always just seem so unsuspected that
Right.
it is them.
Jeffrey Dahmer is a weird one too because there was like a moment that he was gonna get caught. Do you read about this? He
I
like
don't know.
like his youngest victim, like a 12-year-old. He would try to zombify people. He would drill into their skulls and it put some type of chemical, some type of poison into their skull, so that people wouldn't like be wouldn't have any senses and could just sit there and be like his sex toy,
right,
or what have you. But like one kid like ran away. I guess he was like bleeding down his face.
Oh.
And two women. He was like
This
naked.
sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, and like he like ran off, and then like Jeffrey Dahmer was like, "This is my like what son-in-law or something like that."
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's just crazy. Meanwhile, like the kid looks completely different than him. Like he's 12 years old and naked, first of all. And Jeffrey Dahmer, like he might have come across as fine, but like that's a creepy scenario no matter what you are. That's like you could be a normal person. I'd still be like, why are you with this naked 12-year-old who's bleeding? You 40-year-old man. Like, I don't care what your relation is. Why is this person naked and running from you? But anyway, like the police were just like, oh yeah, go back to your house. Yeah. And like a week later he's caught and this kid's obviously dead. But it's like that was like a lot of serial killers have like run-ins where like they were almost caught and the police were like, go back to your usual programming, please. Like ignore this. Or Ted Bundy jumps out of his cell.
Oh yeah.
And runs. That was like in the documentary and just runs away. That. And like lives on the land for like a week. Like he comes back with a beard and nobody recognizes him.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
That actually was. I was like, okay, go Ted. Okay. He just opens a window and jumps out like 2 stories and just runs.
Yeah.
Across like Colorado. Like.
Yeah. I wonder how much easier it was to be a serial killer or get away with crimes generally. I don't know, 60 years ago or 80 years ago, like you didn't have, surveillance cameras hardly. And it seems like people were just more lax with what like their kids were doing. Yeah. Your 17-year-old daughter goes to a concert like a state away. She's gone for the weekend. And you're like, she's just being her free self. Like there's nothing to worry about. Or like, you've got your nephews running around naked in the neighborhood. So maybe like for those people who found that kid, they're like, I mean, this is a relatively normal thing to happen in 1950 or 70 or whatever.
Uncles chase their kids all the time naked. Yeah. Well, they screamed, no, don't bring me back to him.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely, I think, easier or than it would be now, I guess, which hopefully is why we don't have as many currently. I mean, just with cell phones, with security and technology, I feel like that it makes everything a little safer. It does make things more like you're being watched, but from Big Brother, not from a serial killer outside your window. It's just technology is taking over. But yeah, people used to like leave their doors unlocked. Yeah.
I wonder though, like if it's just like all in all going in a good direction, like it's getting harder to be a serial killer, so there are less serial killers, or if it's more like an arms race where it's getting harder to be a serial killer, which means the serial killers must then get smarter and better. So it's a constant amount.
They're evolving.
It's just it's like you upgrade your technology at catching serial killers upgrade their tactics.
Right. I mean, okay, yeah, I would say that I think that is irrelevant actually. Like like technology and whatnot. Now that I think about it, I'm changing my opinion. It's probably irrelevant because back in the day, like you only know what you have. So back in the day, I don't think serial killers were thinking, oh, it's so much easier because they don't have security cameras. Like they don't know, like there's no security.
They weren't
cameras.
expecting security cameras to happen.
Yeah, like they're probably thinking this is hard because I don't know where people are.
Right.
Whereas now, like at least there's security cameras, but at least like you know where people are, so you know if like somebody's home or whatnot. Like everyone knows what everyone's doing. You
got those like police car tracker things you can.
Yeah, you can track. Yeah, you know where like police are. Like you know where things are. You can.
Yeah. So you can like look up on internet databases all this information to learn about like all the names of all the police officers in your precinct and like
you can hack onto like the police database, like the police radios, and like know what they're thinking and doing.
Right.
If you were actually like if you were gonna evolve as a serial killer and think about these things. If you're gonna
be a really competent serial killer.
Yeah. I would say the thing that probably deters serial killers now is, I mean, this is just like a crapshoot maybe, but I think right now we're in this technological heyday where we can also, in social media heyday, where we can see what everyone's doing. So there's like a little bit more empathy for people.
Oh, okay.
Whereas, like, I mean, the people that you would normally not ever interact with, like, almost seem like your friends.
Yeah, they seem.
So maybe we have, like, this mentality in our minds where people are more people.
I wonder if that affects people who are, born with psychopathic tendencies, though. Like, if
I like to think so, but
if you are by nature, unfortunately, more psychopathic than another person, does that really even affect you? Like,
right, if you don't have empathy,
Yeah.
you're not going to have empathy.
Right.
But I like to think the norm, like I think what we'd have to worry about more now is like copycat killers and like
people who aren't
notoriety killers and whatnot.
like people who aren't like seriously psychopathic.
Right. But they're the ones who aren't going to be able to get away with it as easily.
Right.
Who might be able to do like one like spur murder, but that's it.
Yeah.
Or spree murder. There's a difference. I looked this up too because I was doing trivia last year with my friends. We did it like once a week. We did trivia, like different themes and different hosts. Like the host would choose a theme. But yeah, I looked up like there's a difference between like serial killers, like you kill 3 people within a course of a certain amount of time, 3 or more. A spree killer, you have to kill if you kill like the same amount, like 3 or more, but within the course of like a day or 2.
Oh, okay. Wait, spur and spree are interchangeable though?
I think it's spree killer.
Yeah, spree killer.
Yeah.
Because spur would be like spur of the moment.
Spur of the moment. But no, but it's spree killers, but their motive is spur of the moment.
Oh, okay.
It's less like that's
Yeah,
how
they just kill like 3 people in a day rather than like
Yeah.
I'm killing 1 person every Wednesday.
Yeah, it's less methodical and thought out.
Right.
It's more spur of the moment and like, okay. Or maybe even just like, God, I can't think of the word I'm thinking.
Chocolate.
It's more chocolate. It's a little bit sweeter. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is what I've been looking up recently because I made the mistake. I was on Reddit and it was like the true crimes Reddit. And it was like, somebody's like, do not listen to this. It'll ruin your life. And I did. Of course, I was like, let me listen to that.
Yeah.
With headphones in at 2 a.m. But it was the Toolbox Killers. Have you heard about them?
I don't think so.
It's what so the Toolbox Killers were 2 guys in California in the late 70s, early 80s that would blast music in their van, kidnap girls, kill them in the back of their van, and like dispose of their bodies in like the hills in like the Santa Monica mountain range or whatever. But what they have like their notoriety for is that they recorded one of their killings in the back of the van. And it's very graphic and gruesome, but it's on record because they used it at the court trial for these 2 guys once they got caught. And now they use it as FBI desensitization training.
Wow.
And the guy who was actually like the lead investigator on it for the FBI for the case killed himself after hearing it.
Wait, is it audio recording?
It's an audio recording of like a girl getting murdered.
Yeah.
I would highly not recommend watching it or listening to, or like you can read transcripts and then you can also listen to it. It's not good.
Did
it's
it
like
ruin your life?
I think it did. No, but it's like
Yeah.
17 minutes of just misery.
It took them 17 minutes to kill someone?
Well, they tortured.
Oh, okay.
It's not good.
Yeah, that's like when you're like 12 and your friends shows you on the internet like, hey, this weird video of like 2 Russian guys literally killing a homeless man with a hammer.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yeah, watch that and then you're permanently scarred for life.
Yeah, and then you always think of it anytime you see a hammer. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, you like cringe a little bit.
Yeah.
That's like what all those videos are. Like, what's that one? It was like, I remember in middle school it was being passed around. It was like the 7 stages of the candy cane forest. No, it was like the 7. It was like a internet thing. It was like 7 links, and you had to click through them to get to the end of this website. There's no prize or anything.
And
It's
just like
like
get worse and worse.
They get worse and worse. Like it's like, I think the first video is like 2 girls, 1 cup or something like that, and then it like transitions into like, I think this video's been debunked as being fake, but it's like somebody throwing like a toddler into a train track.
Oh yeah.
And like getting run over. I think that one was fake, but the rest of them were real. And then there's like another one of somebody like getting like beheaded in like a foreign country. And you click them all, and you have to like watch them before you can click the next thing. I remember that being like a party thing in middle school.
Yeah, I remember I don't know if it exists anymore, but there used to be this subreddit, I think it was called like 50/50 or something. And
where you click a link and
it would always say like the title, like what you're gonna maybe see, like either 50% you're gonna see like spoiler for the latest episode of this TV show, or like literally like a cat being ripped in half.
Yeah.
And it's like, click on it and see which one it is.
Not worth it.
Yeah. I remember I saw a video of somebody crossing a freeway and then a semi truck comes in and they just got like ripped in half.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So you see it in movies, but it's so much worse in real life.
Yeah, when you know it's
real,
special effects,
and you're like, oh god, that's how my body would react too.
Yeah,
that would be anybody. Oof. Instead of just being like, oh yeah, the director chose to do it like that.
Yeah,
like no, that's not. No direction took place. That was just how your body. That's just physics.
Yeah. So, do you want to move on to dark tourism? I feel like this is already in that.
It very much is
realm.
This one as well. Like when I like said it, I was just kind of like spitballing because I was like, I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, we can talk about it for a few minutes. Do you want to? I guess maybe self-evident, but do you want to just explain what dark tourism is?
Yeah. So I mean, dark tourism is. I think it's been more recently popularized. It's essentially visiting locations that are haunted. A true crime has taken place there. A place that like maybe advertises themselves as somewhere that is like redoing events of a true crime, or a place that looks like it. Like say like, I mean, it'd be like me going to Long Island and visiting the Amityville Horror House, which I have, like things like that, where which I've done on multiple occasions, or like visiting like as simple as like visiting like the insane asylum as kids or something like that, where you like visit like an abandoned place that like had like the tragedy happen. Not so much as like visiting, I guess, like Auschwitz or something, because I think that's more historical than dark tourism. Because that's, I mean, but it would be if that was something that was. I mean, that could probably be considered dark tourism if you like.
I guess it depends on your motivations for going there.
Right. I think dark tourism is more like you're fascinated by the
gruesome or
the killer of it.
Yeah.
Like you're not thinking like, oh, let me see like let me pray for the victims who are here. And like, let me really think about like what life is. You're going there to be like, all right, what happened here? This is interesting. Like, like a lot of houses for serial killers are like now on like tourist locations, like for cities or whatnot. Like, I mean, just everywhere, like in places like get off on that.
Yeah, I wonder if that's like that the houses of serial killers being tourist attractions. I wonder if that's a really unhealthy thing to exist. It's almost like in some cases it really is, like we were talking about it, like putting serial killers on a pedestal, or like looking up to them, or like admiring them by giving them so much attention.
Yeah,
and then like in one way, like you want to give them attention so you can like learn about how this happens to people and all that, but it can easily veer into idolizing serial killers,
right?
Which then it just seems like that's a great way to have more serial killers exist, if they can expect to be rewarded by adoration in the future.
Yeah, be like, oh, your house is gonna be
like
memorialized,
and you're gonna have people make documentaries about you, and like you're gonna have people like writing love letters, and even after you die, people are gonna be obsessed with you for hundreds of years.
Right. But it is also interesting. This is maybe just some random piece of information. I was recently looking up like upticks in the horror genre, and like what makes them, because it fluctuates like popularity wise, and what makes the horror genre more popular besides just like the normal better CGI, better story, whatnot, like that. That's more irrelevant from like a film perspective, or not a film perspective, but like a genre perspective. Yeah,
because all genres are increasing with like quality in
so like
CGI
that's irrelevant. It's like, okay, like they're all going to get better over time based on like whatever you're watching. But it's interesting, things similar to dark tourism, the horror genre, when things are safer in the world, it tends to spike like the popularity. When people feel more at ease and comfortable, they tend to watch horrors and in like darker things, which is right now, like I think people are feeling a little bit more safe. Like, I mean, just as far as like otherworldly things, like we're not at war with anyone. Yeah. Which is when like popularity for like heroism and comedies come into play, when people just need something to think about, like either saviors or laugh. Yeah. So in the last like maybe 10 years, it's been more like horror has kind of like gone through a little revival, similar to how it was in the 90s, where it was like, all right, there's nothing really to worry about as far as like other places go. So like, so it's interesting to see like all these crime documentaries that are coming out, and it's nothing new. Like these are crimes from like the 70s.
So then you're saying in some way that the more like horror movies and almost like the more obsession there is with serial killers, that's at least in one way like a factor, an identifier of like a healthy
maybe that's a good
civilization.
Thing. Yeah, like okay, here's something like
things are going well
not
for
happening
people
right now. Yeah. I mean, I don't think people would research Ted Bundy if there's another serial killer on the loose right now as much. Or, I mean, maybe they would, but it'd be from a different perspective.
Yeah.
They wouldn't. They'd be like, "Oh God, am I going to be a victim?
Right.
What do serial killers think like?" But right now, it's more like, "Oh, interesting. How is that possible?"
Yeah. So you're saying then also that like in war-torn countries or where like genocides are happening and all that, horror is not a popular genre.
I would say no. Like, why would
Yeah.
I would not want to watch?
Yeah, you would just don't want to be reminded of the shit that's
Yeah.
outside your window.
I mean, because if you look up like movie popularity genres and whatnot, they tend to spike. Like, if we're in war, it's comedies. It's like Marvel. It's lighthearted movies that make that there's an protagonist who is relatable, and it's you.
Yeah.
And you are the protagonist. Things are going well. Those movies still exist, but they're less. They don't need to punch as hard. They don't need to tell you that things are happy. They can kind of just like experiment with like dark humor and whatnot, because people accept that into their lives because they don't have it going on everywhere they walk. So yeah, like horror takes like a big upswing when things are going a little smoother and people feel less like they're going to be bombed.
So then that brings in another factor of why people might be so into serial killers or murderers. Not because I already mentioned maybe the innate desire for violence or like some sort of small amount of wanting to experience it yourself, and then you were talking about or like we were talking about wanting to understand them, but maybe it also comes down to, or maybe more comes down to, a certain craving for fear. Like you have a certain amount of fear that you want to experience. So then you're saying like right here, like if you're in a situation where you're not experiencing enough fear, you go seek it out by getting too into serial killers, and that makes you afraid, or getting into horror movies, and that makes you afraid.
Right.
And then when you're living in fear, you don't need more of it.
Yeah, you need less. You need to counter that.
Yeah.
So maybe we all have like some type of like tipping balance for emotions, or for
some ideal fear
threshold,
level that we
where it's like
are trying to satiate.
Today was great. Let me go terrify myself a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's kind of true. Like you don't want to, if you're having a bad day, you're not gonna be like, let's put a horror movie on.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna want to put a comedy movie on, or like something that's like stupid or just in the background. You're not gonna want to watch Saw and have somebody ripped apart in front of your eyes after like having the worst day at work in your life.
Yeah.
Unless you like that, then maybe get some help. I don't know. But that seems to be less normal.
Yeah, if you just answer like having shit day with more shit.
Yeah.
Put the fear on top of the fear. Yeah.
It's like an energy balance that you seek out without realizing it.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it's also probably true that it's not just generally fear. You got different like ways of expressing it, because you might want to seek out some fear, some like uncertain excitement, but maybe you don't want to do it through horror movies like really ever in your life, because there are plenty of people who just kind of all the time hate horror movies.
Yeah.
But they might still want to express their need for fear in other ways, like by dating people who are awful for them.
Right.
Or
it's a different type of horror, more psychological, but yeah.
Or maybe traveling to a different country, like being on their own, like not knowing what to do in a new environment or something like that.
Yeah, like more like they could gravitate towards more adrenaline.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like skydiving or
that's
whatever. Rather than going to see Saw 7. Or I don't know how many Saws there are. But.
There's a lot. I think they've stopped numbering them now. The last one's just called Jigsaw.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think for me though, I definitely have a lower desire for horror than you do. I think maybe part of it was that I was exposed to horror too young. I remember being like 5 or something, and you guys were all watching a bunch of horror movies all October long, and I did not want to be there for it. And I don't know, it's like being like 5 or 6, like you don't want to be alone either. So it's like, what do you choose? Just sit by yourself in a different room, or be with the rest of your family watching horrific movies?
Sit by yourself while hearing screams of terror from the movie in the next room.
Yeah, so I'm not that big into horror. I do like the psychological thrillers, and the ones that are more about like less about gore and less about like jump scares, but more about like a feeling of like unease, I guess.
Yeah, those would definitely be
like the Get Outs, or like the
that have a story to tell, and they're not just trying to scare you. It's not what is it, like gore porn? Is that, or whatever? What are the Saw ones categorized?
That's probably right.
Something similar to that.
I've never seen any of the Saw movies.
I've seen them all.
I just knew that they weren't really for me. But.
I've seen them through covered eyes. I always hold my hands up on my face, like, and then I just like pinch my eyes out of it every once in a while, so I can see it. I actually look at it the whole time, basically, but I will have it under just in case something I don't like seeing bone. So if there's a bone, I'm out.
Oh yeah.
I got passionate about talking about it and I slammed the table.
See, it always happens.
I didn't know it'd be me talking about Saw. Actually, I don't like them. I just watch them. I actually watch them for the plot.
They have good plots?
No,
Oh.
but I was curious about how the plot was. So I remember I watched all of them a couple years ago in like 2 days. I just watched them all.
Yeah. Or like Purge. Like I don't really have an interest in seeing Purge very much.
Oh, I actually like. I think I saw the first one in theaters.
It seems like those movies are just watch people die.
The concept it had a good concept, but it didn't go anywhere. But the concept was like kind of fascinating to be like.
Well, the
I
concept of the Purge was along the lines of what I was saying is people have some base desire for like savage violence that they want to commit,
right?
And then so the government is giving them one day of the year to do that.
Yeah, the first one I remember the trailer was a lot less horror. I thought it was gonna be more like psychological, like psychological thriller horror type of thing, where it was like, what would you do if no laws existed for 20 or for 12 hours? But instead, and now it's just that whole genre of that franchise is just, all right, you go outside, you're being murdered.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would actually be the case. I don't think people would kill people if they had 12 hours. I think it'd be more robberies and maybe death by associate, like just maybe Jeffrey Bezos would die, but that's if we're lucky. No, but I think it'd be more like, it'd be more financial. It would be way less just about killing somebody because they said you looked fat the week before.
Yeah, it'd be all like the Target employees going to Target and stealing everything.
Yeah. And you'd steal what you know because you're not going to go in somewhere because no one's going to buy a bomb for the Purge.
Well, some people.
If you can't buy it the days before, how are you?
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, you buy it on Purge Day one year, save it for Purge Day the next year.
That would be smart. You just stock up.
Yeah. Whenever I think the Purge, my mind more goes to the Rick and Morty episode of the planet that has the Purge. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Oh, okay. I don't know. It's kind of interesting because there's a planet that does Purge and it's like a thing, I guess, in the galaxy. And they stop by because Rick wants to show Morty. Morty isn't into it, but he's like, it's cool. Like you just get to kill people. And then, the plot turns into like there's this group of the rich people, probably like in Purge too, a group of the rich people who are profiting off of this. And like all the peasants are killing themselves and the rich people are just, maintaining the status quo. So then they kill all the rich people. And then they're like, well, how do we rebuild our society now? And they're like, I could grow food, but I'm not just going to give it to you for free. So like someone should pay me for it. And this one's like, well, I'll pay you for it. But I'm going to make the bread. And like, who's going to count the bread? Who's going to I'll do that too. So they just become the same exact civilization that they had in the first place. And like, maybe to get all this, like they start beating each other up. Like maybe to get all this frustration out, we ought to schedule one day a year to and then it just same
thing.
Yeah.
That's actually genius.
Yeah.
Because that's what would happen. Like everyone who talks about like socialism, things like that, like in like not in the purest way, just in like I need more.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, where does that stop?
Right.
Not to get political, but it is funny to see like that's how things just kind of circle back. You're like,
right.
All right,
it's like a vicious cycle. Like if you do manage to overthrow this regime and you find yourself in power, you're just going to take advantage of your place of power.
Or someone's always going to have a good that is more valuable.
Right.
And that is going to be the currency that holds the most value and everyone's going to want it.
Yeah.
That person's going to be more wealthy no matter what that wealth is. There's always going to be somebody who has something that somebody else wants.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess it's kind of a fatalistic way to look at it, but also at the same time, you could try maybe acknowledge that to some degree, there's always going to be some amount of inequality, but how do you lessen it as much as possible? Because it might be unrealistic to think that you could ever completely equalize everything. You could ever make it into a perfect situation where nobody has more power than another person.
Oh yeah, it'd be impossible.
And if it's inevitably just through shitty human nature, like if somebody has more power than another person, they're going to be a dick about it. Like they're going to use it to their benefit and to someone else's detriment.
Unless we all have the same perspective and the same reality. And that's been our show, folks.
Well, I mean, that I guess to get there, maybe the way is just brainwashing people, but we're like...
And then there's just one person in charge.
Yeah. Or like turning everybody into one person.
Right.
Like making a hive mind kind of thing.
Yeah.
Plug everyone into the internet and now everyone's consciousness is shared. And now like you literally all have the same goal because you are the same person now.
That'd be interesting. If you had all the information, but then also all of the consciousness.
I wonder if life would even be worth living in that situation though. Like if you're the only experiencing thing, what do you even do for fun?
Yeah, how are you gonna murder?
But I mean, like, what? You're just gonna you can go look at cool things. You could build cool things, but like, how long until that gets boring?
Right.
Like, maybe it's other people are the only thing that makes life interesting.
Well, that's even how I feel now. Just with all the information we have, is like, all right, you can like, even going past like tourist destinations, say like on a road trip, they're like so busy and overpopulated, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this looks cool, and then you think about it. Like I wanted to see like these waterfalls in Oregon like 2 weeks ago, and it was so busy just to get to them, and I was like, all right, I've seen these online. I know what they look like.
Yeah.
These people are all taking a picture that's going to probably be lesser quality of what's online. Yeah, I'm sure it looks beautiful in real life, but I've seen a waterfall in real life. This is just 2 waterfalls with a bridge in the middle. Like, it's the iconic, like, Oregon waterfall thing. Everyone's seen it on a picture. But I was like, do I want to wait, like, an hour to find parking in a spot that's, like, a pull-off right from the road? No hiking involved. You just see it.
Yeah.
Just to take a picture that's been taken 1,000,000 times. It's like that. It's like, all right, when is this going to end? This new information being presented to you, when is it going to be too much? Or I just don't want to see anything in the world because it's already been seen. Everything's been seen and touched and done.
Right.
Like, what are you going to bring to that? It's like when people take pictures at certain places, I'm always kind of confused. I'm like, okay, like somebody's taken that picture before. You can see that.
Right. They want to feel ownership over that picture, I guess. Or like,
I mean, I do the same thing, but I catch myself while I'm taking a picture without me in it or without a friend in it. It always feels weird to be taking a picture of something that has been documented already. Because you're like, and it's from a lower quality, because I'm sure whatever you're taking a picture of, that like you
there's been a professional photographer who has a way nicer camera,
and you probably saw, and like especially now with like Instagram, you probably saw it online, which made you have the idea to go see it in real life. And then you saw it in real life, and you're taking a picture of it, but that picture you've already seen. So why even bother? Why are you documenting it?
Yeah.
If the whole point of you seeing it was for you to see it, because you hadn't seen it in real life, why take another picture? Why take another video? If you've already seen it in a picture or video. I mean,
just to remind yourself that one time you were there.
You were there.
Yeah. I did go to Chichen Itza.
I mean, that's what I use mine for. Like, I'll like scroll through, like, when did I go there? I'll scroll through my photo album. But I catch myself when I'm taking pictures or videos, like, what are you going to do with this? Like, this has already been done.
It's not so much that the picture itself matters. It's like the log of your experiences.
Right.
It's just like a easier way to write a diary entry.
Yeah. Just click.
Yeah.
All right, I was here. Yeah. And then you remember it because you see the picture and you remember what you were doing, how you were feeling. And
memories attached to that. I can look at my pictures of Chichen Itza and know that like that day was super fucking hot. I was like dying. We didn't have any water.
Yeah.
And like, but it was cool.
But you see somebody else's picture of that. You're probably like, oh yeah, they had a great day.
Yeah.
Because you don't know their experience.
Right. So I guess there's some value, but it does make me think that like maybe all human interest or like interest you have in something is in a way just manufactured by other people. Like
a little bit. I mean, if somebody sees something cool, I want to see that.
Right. And then like you want to see it because somebody else thought it was cool. And they thought it was cool because somebody else, like your own desires don't actually come from you. They just come from the basically the equivalent of the hive mind that already exists, just the mass of humans deciding arbitrarily what's interesting and what's not.
But it's also like equally depressing when you go visit somewhere. Like I like to travel by myself more so than with other people.
Yeah.
I honestly get not upset, but just annoyed with when I'm traveling with other people because we'll see things that somebody wanted to see and I have no interest in it. It could be the coolest thing in the world or not, but it's like I didn't want to see that. In my mind, I didn't know it existed, or in my mind, I saw it in a picture and thought, okay, I could do without that in my life. But it's like depressing to go somewhere that should be cool or that's like a destination that people go to, and you're like with other people who want to see it and you don't want to see it.
You're just not interested.
And it makes that experience, you're like, I don't want to take a picture.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. And then in your mind, you're like, I was never here.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess traveling alone is definitely the way to maximize your freedom. Just do the things that you want without having to like wait on anyone else's schedule or deal with anyone else's illness or anyone else's
I'd say it's
contradictory desires to yours.
It's definitely the ideal way to travel, in my opinion. Besides maybe like dating someone who has the same opinions as you or the same desires, I guess. I
think maybe the way I see it is that traveling solo is better in maybe better in the moment, but worse after the fact. Because how do you relive those memories? Like if you tell someone else about the thing that you saw alone,
Right.
They don't really understand it, and you can often, in my experience anyway, when I do it, I feel like I'm coming off as a douchebag. Like, look at this thing I did. But if you go with someone, then at least you have one other person you can relive it with, and like, remember that time we were there, and neither of you feels like a douchebag for bringing up your traveling experiences.
Right.
But then while you're there, it's like, yeah, but I would have liked to climb up this really difficult mountain trail, and you didn't want to, so we didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in the moment it's better. Or you just keep some stories to yourself. Like sometimes people sometimes people ask you stories and then you tell them. Other times it's like, all right, that was my trip.
Right.
That was for me.
Yeah.
They don't need to know. Or like the people you travel, like you find out, like, or you become friends with while traveling. They ask stories because you're asking them about where they were before,
Right.
and now it's like this. That is the common.
Yeah, doing it in that context is not douchey anymore because you're both travelers while traveling. Like, you can tell each other stories, and
It'd be different if you were just like this single person who traveled by themselves all the time and then came back to like a group of friends.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
I was in Paris.
guess where I was last weekend? And no one asked, and like everyone saw you posted it. Everyone's like, okay, and then you just tell them stories. That's super douchey.
Yeah.
Because I know people who've done that, and you're just like, could we not?
Yeah.
Like, we all saw it, and you're like, oh, it was so much better over there, blah, blah. And you're like, all right, leave.
Yeah. So what dark tourism spots aside from the Amityville Horror House have you visited?
I feel like I haven't visited that many. I've gone to a few places that are like considered like haunted. I mean, like the Queen Mary in Long Beach is considered haunted. I don't think that's a dark tourism spot because they have like events there a lot of the times. Where else? I mean, the that house we saw a few years ago in San Francisco.
The one with all the weird unnecessary rooms?
That's technically like a dark tourism.
Was there a murder
spot.
there? They did say there was supposed to be a ghost.
It's like haunted. It's like haunted places are like considered like dark tourism. But like somewhere like that, like people who are like fascinated by like horror would go there. You wouldn't go there just for fun to like learn about architecture. Yeah. Maybe you would because it's weird, but
I mean, it's really impractical architecture. They just built a bunch of houses so that they could say they had that house with the most rooms in it or something like that.
Well, it was the Winchester.
Yeah, the Winchester.
And she was terrified because somebody put a curse on her family. She thought they produced guns, and so the wife of Sir Winchester, Mary? No, I don't know what her first name was.
Supernatural.
Mary Winchester. Is that? Okay, never mind. But yeah, she thought that all of the murder victims of the guns that her family produced were going to haunt her in the house, and then someone cursed her and told her that she needed to keep building so that they can't find her.
Oh, so she can hide in her labyrinth house.
So yeah, so she literally she kept building until the day she died. Like, she kept having architects build hallways.
Wow.
Because
I had forgotten that backstory of the house.
Weird.
I just remembered being in the house.
And it's like, and she was like 5'2", so like some of the like places are super short, so you like duck in the hallway. It's like, this leads to like the grand bedroom, but it's like, why is the hallway so short? Oh, there used to be another hallway, but it's blocked off now because this is the next addition to the hallway.
Yeah, I just remember the tour guide being like, "Oh, did you guys see the ghost? I just saw it." And then, of course, nobody was looking, so nobody saw it. Yeah.
I guess even Salem, Massachusetts would be considered like a dark tourism area.
Yeah.
Which I would love to visit one day.
Is there anything to visit there?
They do during like Halloween, they do like a Salem Halloween.
They do a reenactment of a bunch of girls getting murdered?
They take every virgin in the village and they burn them no, I don't know. That's terrible to joke about because that was a terrible thing. That's also brushed over, like the witch trials. Like,
we totally go over that, and like we read The Crucible in English class.
But it's like, it's interesting to think that it's all the people who are like, witches don't exist, but during the witch trial they did, and it's like, what? Okay, so we're gonna ignore the fact that we as a society don't believe in witchcraft, but we're gonna also talk about how like those weren't just regular women that we burned at the stake. What? Those were just like free-spirited women we just burned at the stake and consider them witches. I don't say we. I'm not part of that. I'm saying as a country, I guess, if I have to.
Or humanity, I guess.
Humanity.
Yeah, I was listening to a different podcast about witch burning, and apparently in the Middle Ages there were at least like 40,000 confirmed cases of witch burnings.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And they were literally like, I swear, if you probably looked up like what they did the week before, they probably said no to some suitor. Yeah, like there was probably some guy who like,
or they're just like a town outcast, like they're an old widow.
That's
that,
weird.
Like, you know,
why do they have a black cat? Like, what?
Yeah, there was one.
That's not a thing
that I remember. Well, there's one that I remember of a group of 3 cats would hang out by this one person's house.
Oh no!
and one of the cats had like a scar, which so happened to correspond with the location of a scar on an old woman's body. So like she's one of the cats. She's been transformed into a cat at night.
Right.
So then they killed her and her 2 friends because logic goes her cat friends are her real life friends.
Checks out.
So
with one scar, they're like, that's all we need.
Yeah. So then they killed them all.
The chance that there's 3 animagus, that's ridiculous. They got to be registered.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. And there's this one guy who was a famous witch hunter, and he had this trick where, those like those drama school daggers that just plunge into your body because they go into the handle. He had a syringe that did that, and his rule was that we know they're a witch if we don't draw blood. So he would use the syringe and no blood would come out. Yeah.
Oh.
So he was like, look, that's how, because he knew he was a charlatan, but he would do it for money because towns would like pay him lots of money to prove that someone's a witch.
So he just go around murdering women at towns.
Yeah.
Or getting them murdered.
Yeah, whoever the town accused of witchcraft, he would just prove that they're a witch and then get paid for it.
That's because that probably happened all the time. That was probably how they.
He was some Scottish guy who would go around all of England doing this.
The Scots, I tell you.
And then they finally found out that he was a fraud, so they chased him out of town. And he didn't like die or anything. He just
lived to the next town.
Well, he had to retire basically with all his riches. But he had an assistant.
He's like, I guess I'll retire now.
Or like a sidekick.
Igor? His name's Igor.
Who, for some reason, they didn't think, you're this guy's sidekick, so you're probably also fake. That person continued their career.
I tell you what, people were stupid back then.
Yeah. Okay, that's one thing I think a lot. People were stupid back then. But then it's like, wait a minute. Aren't we just equally as stupid now? Like,
yeah, we have more widely available information.
Yeah, but like the base like logic and critical thinking skills that a human has, I feel like might be consistent over time.
Oh yeah, they're the same. We just have more. We just have more information.
Or like we have more of a structure, or like institutions to like prevent our stupidest acts.
Right, because we've done them, so there's precautions in place.
Yeah, right.
We don't burn witches, you guys. We've gone through this.
Yeah, like for all the horrible faults of like the legal system, at least we have something in place. It's like any amount of evidence, like there needs to be one thing.
Yeah,
where it used to be just like, I say she's a witch, so she is.
She floats, or no? They say
that was the another stupid thing, like the Monty Python sketch. If they float, they're a witch. If they sink to the bottom and drown, they were innocent. So either way, they die.
So they die. Yeah, they float like a human floats.
Yeah,
they die.
So you're like, oh, you're a witch. Like we're gonna burn you now. And then they happen to not be a good swimmer and drown. Well, now that they were innocent.
Yeah, it's interesting that nobody ever spoke up on that. Who could swim in the village? Like, no child was like, I can float. I float all the time down that river.
I mean, it was probably like a, like precursor to McCarthyism. Like, if you spoke up, you're afraid of speaking up because then somebody's going to accuse you of being a communist or being a witch or whatever it is.
The witch trials.
Yeah.
What a joke.
Have you watched that Netflix show Dark Tourist?
Yeah, he goes to a lot of them, but in like a lot of different countries.
Right. I don't remember most of them, but I remember he goes to this one place where they do like voodoo and they like kill like chickens and stuff, and then you have to like bathe in or like the blood, and then it's one of those situations where the people have like spirit possession rituals where the like people get in a group and all like dance, and then somebody at a certain whenever they feel like the spirit is taking them, they start acting crazy and like self-mutilating themselves. So he went to go witness those festivals.
Those are weird too, because what's going on in that person's mind? They're like, let me put on a good show, or do they really get into it that much where they think that they're being possessed or whatever? Like, I
wouldn't put it past people to actually believe it and then act it out,
and then be like, oh, that was that was me.
Like it's like the perception perspective and reality thing. Like if you do believe that the spirit possession is a thing,
why can't it happen to you in that moment?
Right.
When it's being celebrated and whatnot, especially.
Yeah. And that's like the time of year or month or however often it happens for like to invite these spirit possessions in. So it's like, it's going to happen to someone now. It's probably going to happen to you now.
That is another thing like that's brushed over in our history is all of the diagnosable mental illnesses that were also considered like religious like shortcomings. Like, oh yeah, this person's in bed all the time, there must be a demon,
right?
Like that's something people still think now. Like people who are super religious, they like don't take into consideration a provable fact of mental illness.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, there's my son has a demon in him, or like they're depressed, or like there's like demon possession, or just pray, things like that. It's just ridiculous, like how we see that as normal. If you talk to somebody religious and you like kind of brush that aside, like as if they're not crazy, like okay, yeah, they told somebody to like pray and they'll feel better,
Right.
But meanwhile it's like
considered normal.
Yeah, but like that is ridiculous. Like okay, like
I mean, it's equally as ridiculous as the spirit possession ceremonies. Like,
yeah,
they're both ridiculous. And then it's just because we grew up in this culture where it's been normalized that we can look at a culture in like Ghana that does the spirit possession and think that's stupid. Where I'm sure any other civilization unaccustomed to ours thinks like, you know, what we do is stupid.
Yeah.
That we think when somebody's depressed, it's because there's a demon. It's like, no, like that's obviously not what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, luckily we don't think that, or not everyone thinks that now.
Yeah, I don't think there's a prosperous industry of priests going around like exercising people anymore.
But that was a big thing, like schizophrenic, like people with schizophrenia. It was like, oh, you see somebody, okay, yeah, that's like a devil is inside of you.
Yeah,
and like that. I mean, I'm sure the people who were like acting it out were probably like, okay, like yeah, let me put on a show for them. I don't even know, or like,
I mean, if they believe it too,
or if they believe, yeah,
it'd be like a placebo, like the exorcism ritual could be a placebo effect to somebody who has this mental illness and believes that it is a demonic possession.
And then they just hide it for the rest of their lives once they see it coming back. So they're like, okay.
Yeah, or, you know, they're a repeat offender. Like,
right,
this person is prone to demonic possession.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's true. Happens all the time. Another one.
Yep. Gotta do the monthly visit to Stacy's house to sprinkle some holy water on her cheeks.
That's something that I've always been curious and fascinated about, is like ghosts and demons and whatnot. But my fascination comes from I don't see how people can believe it.
Yeah.
And I would love to, like, people who are like, I saw ghosts and whatnot, like, especially like, I think in LA where I've lived like the longest, like people are very spiritual there.
Yeah.
And people love to like, I mean, they talk about signs and whatnot, which I don't disprove or whatever. I'm just like, I'm very like a skeptic towards anything.
Right. Especially
Especially with things I can't see, like ghosts and whatnot. So people tell me like, oh, like that place is haunted. I'm always more curious about like, well, no, it's not. Like, it's not haunted like that. Because in my opinion, all those things, they come from something.
Right.
Like a haunted building in my head is always, okay, no, something happened there that a neighbor said. And now, okay, yeah, there was like a loud howling one night. Okay, like
they got a bad reputation. And now in like the cultural psyche, people perceive it to be haunted. Right. So like you feel weird around it.
Yeah.
Because everyone else feels weird around it.
Yeah. But like people believe that sometimes, like in a lot of the times places that are haunted, it's always from like somebody killed themselves there.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that, and they get very like anxious about that, and then it becomes, oh, that place is haunted. Somebody died, their whole family moved out. Like it's always some tragic event, like, or just some complete naivety of like what it is. Like, oh yeah, that place is just loud. Like, all right.
Yeah.
There's just some domestic violence happening. That house is haunted. Don't go to that house on the street. You hear it as a kid all the time. Like, you're like, don't go to that house. You think that house is creepy. It's always like the house that's creepy is like the one that like has problems going on.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like that even in like the 90s, like think about that 50 years ago, that's probably, that house is haunted. That house is creepy. We don't know who lives there. They work at night. There's yelling. That must be haunted. Like, we don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Like, things like that. Like,
the wind goes through the windows just right to make this creepy howling noise.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, there are rats in the walls, so you think that's a ghost.
Yeah. And then they move, and then everyone in the neighborhood's like, that house is probably haunted.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a haunted house.
And then, because like there's this perception in the neighborhood that the house is haunted, the realtors have trouble selling the house, so it just goes abandoned for the next 60 years, which confirms even more that it's a haunted house.
And everyone's like, no one wants to buy that house. It's like, oh, no, wait, it's just the realtor's having a hard time, guys. Like,
yeah, it's like putting the cart before the horse. Like, you decided it was haunted, now it's haunted.
Yeah.
Rather than like finding out that it is haunted, which I mean, it's not.
Yeah. Because a lot of times like realtors, I mean, it's harder to sell a house that somebody like died in.
Yeah.
So as soon as somebody dies in a house, it's a haunted house.
Right.
Not per se, like not in the modern day as much, because it's like that stuff is like people die all the time in their houses, and we know about it because we are more connected. But like back then, if you didn't know somebody who was living somewhere and somebody just died, and then like the family moves out because like somebody died in the house, like you're gonna be like automatically assuming like it's haunted.
Yeah. One thing that always gets me about ghost belief that I just think is crazy is like if I talk to someone who says they believe in ghosts, And then ask them, why? Why do they believe in ghosts? And they tell me a story of this one time that they saw or claimed to see a ghost. And then I ask them other questions like, how do you know it was a ghost? Like, what exactly did you see? And then,
I just know.
like, could it have been this? Could it have been this? Like, why do people's minds go to probably one of the least likely scenarios when, for instance, this is one somebody told me. They were, like, at their friend's house, and they're having a sleepover, and they knew their dad was in this other room. And they saw someone walk past. And there was only those two people, the dad. So it couldn't have been the dad. It couldn't have been the other person because they both saw it.
Right.
In my mind is like, why is it so impossible to believe that there was somebody else in that house?
Yeah.
Like a human being.
Or the dad walked.
Or it was the dad. You thought you knew where the dad was.
Like
but
he's in the computer room, but he got a snack.
Yeah, or he's a sleepwalker. You thought he was asleep. He's a sleepwalker.
Which that's more terrifying than ghosts.
Or like there are literal reported cases of people living in some house's pantry for 5 years without the owners noticing.
Oh yeah, that's creepy.
That's more creepy than a ghost.
That's terrifying.
Like that one Supernatural episode where they go to the haunted house and realize it's a real person who's living in the walls. That was one of the most horrifying episodes I've seen. It's not even that scary of a show, but like compared to all the other,
I've seen that one, but
it's like season 3 or something.
Oh, maybe I have then.
I think you've probably seen it.
Okay. But that's scary.
So like, I feel like if we're gonna, have kind of a lack of evidence all around, and we're judging what scenario is more plausible, it seems obvious that it's just more plausible that there was somebody like freebooting or like stowing away in your house without your knowledge than it's literally a ghost.
Yeah. Yeah, that does seem, yeah.
And then when I bring that up to people for some reason, like, they're like, no, I just feel like it was a ghost. Like my personal experience tells me it was a ghost. Like, why do you trust your personal experience so much?
Have you seen more ghosts? Yeah, or like
don't you know like the inherent unreliability of eyewitness testimony? Like people will claim that they saw this thing happen, and it gets someone put in jail, and then 20 years later it is conclusively found out that that person did not do that thing, and then the test like the eyewitness testimony was just incorrect.
Didn't they do like a study on that? Like they did like an eyewitness like report, like a analyzing like a test, and they like had people like look at people, and like not even like 10 minutes later like describe who that person, and like no one could.
It's like a drastic drop off in your memory kind of
like if you don't think you have to look for something, you're not going to look for it.
Yeah. Like when the police officers ask you what color shirt was he wearing, you're like blue, and he was wearing a dark like
unless you like saw a person
or white or whatever,
like do an actual, but like most of the eyewitnesses like they saw somebody run from a building, which happens all the time. You see somebody run from a building or walk away from somewhere,
and even if you saw someone like 5 feet away from you stab a man in the chest, are you gonna remember his face? Like
no, you're gonna look at the person being stabbed and be like, oh my, or the stabbing, and you're like, there's blood. Like you're not gonna be like, he had a scar and blue eyes.
Right. You can like find a lineup, and even the real guy's in there, and you might not pick him out.
Right. So
like, how can you be so sure that you saw a ghost of all things?
I always wonder with the lineups, where do they get the other people?
I think they do like the they ask witnesses or whatever like what the guy looked like, and they just pick guys who look like
and
that.
Like, we need to bring you in. Like they bring like 10 people in. Like
they have like one of them or two of them who are actual suspects, and they just bring in people who look similar.
Okay.
So that they can.
And they're allowed to do that. They're like, we can bring you in.
I don't know if it's. I think it's probably voluntary. Like.
Oh, okay. Like, do you mind if we bring you to the station? And if they're innocent, like, yeah.
Probably.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I always thought it was like lookalike actors, and they know who the.
I mean, it could be that, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like that's their way of trying to like put in some like falsification of the setting or into the thing where like the police officers know it's not those three guys. Like they don't make any sense.
Well, because they know they're not like looking for the witness.
So if the witness points out one of those guys, they're an unreliable witness. Maybe that's what they're hoping for.
And
so
they're like, we can't.
Yeah, they're trying to build in some sort of like, can we trust this witness?
Right. But that's why I always thought it was like one person. The other 9 are just lookalikes they found who like they're like okay.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Call a background service, like call an acting agency and
get all these guys with brown hair and mustaches.
Yeah,
and that are 6 foot.
Yeah, and then they like just are like, yep, that's on the budget. It's just like stand-ins for the witnesses.
But even when they do that, it's still not reliable because you have like DNA evidence show that the person who the witness accused was not the person.
Right.
Yeah. Have you seen Making a Murderer?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, not the last 2 episodes.
Of what, the second season? Because there's 2 seasons.
Oh, I didn't watch the second season.
Oh, so you haven't seen the last 2 episodes?
I honestly
of the first
just
season.
got annoyed with their accents. I know that's the Wisconsin accent, but I can't stand it.
Yeah, it's the Manitowoc County accent.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, it's bad. It's real bad. Can't stand it.
Oh yeah, they're pretty unintelligible a lot of time, especially the parents, like in that family. the older.
It was just hard to follow. I had to have subtitles on and everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm from
Well, for me, it
2
was
hours from this place.
it was just like extremely frustrating to watch. Even if Stephen Avery did do the thing, there is still complete colluding on the part of the police.
Oh, right.
Like they were still doing
Yeah.
sketchy shit. They were covering up stuff. Like and like they were signing like, you know, they're forging people's signatures on documents, and they were like specifically gunning to get this guy in prison even if he wasn't guilty because they had beef with him.
See, in my perspective, I feel like I think this is actually why I stopped watching it. I'm less interested in that type of not even conspiracy, just like the police being
The corrupt police,
Yeah,
and like getting like false confessions, that kind of thing.
Corruption, I feel like interests me less because I feel like it's so obvious. It's happening all around us all the time that like I don't want to watch a documentary about police corruption because like okay, that's obvious. Like that's like okay, like I'm more fascinated by like the serial killer and like what they did, and I'm like, oh, how? Yeah, because to me, I'm like that's more fascinating. So I think that's why I stopped watching that, because I'm like, it's about the police in this county being corrupt. Yeah, which happens in every fucking county. This definitely went from reality and perspective to like just true crime and like horror. Yeah, it's gonna be a Halloween episode.
Well, probably not.
It'll take 3 months to edit this.
Okay, I was interested in this topic, so let's just do a quick go into lucid dreaming and astral projection, because I'm especially curious now that you just said you are skeptic about things that we can't see, like ghosts and demons. So I wonder what your thoughts are on this.
Well, so okay, this I think I'm very interested in these things because dreams are crazy. Like we don't know what they are and why they are. Like to me, that is insane that we all dream, but we like don't like, and we don't know how to measure why or what. Like there's no science behind it. Yeah. Like still, like I'm like we're busy discovering outer space and stuff like that. Like why are we putting money into that? Like I want to put money into our minds and find out what we're dreaming about, because same with like astral projection, because I think those things are like lucid dreaming and astral projection. I think are real. I'm saying that question
I'll have to question you on that,
because astral projection maybe a little bit less, but I've lucid dreamed and I can do it pretty regularly.
I mean, I don't have any reservations against lucid dreaming being real. Astral projection, that's another story.
I've tried to astral project many times, with no results.
Okay, hold on. What do you mean by astral projection? Like, what does this look like?
Like out of body, like you can
go places in the real world with just your mind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or yeah.
But this wouldn't be your imagination. Like it wouldn't be exploring. Like say you're imagining the other room over there, and you're in your mind. You're walking in that room in your imagination. No, that's not that. It's your mind is going to the literal, physical, different place. Yeah, from your body. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if I believe it, but I want to. I've tried it so many times. Like I've tried to like.
Well, I mean, it'd be certainly awesome if that was a thing.
Because I mean, there's like reports of people who have done it, but I don't know if it's like true. It's like this out of body experience, and they've like a lot of the place. It's like different cultures and countries have a lot of like practices they do. Like there's like, and a lot of it. There's some that even like it's for curing trauma and whatnot, which I was more interested in like that aspect of it also. Because I think it's like less cool to do like the like Ebenezer Scrooge, like you're in the present day, like you're just walking around hearing people talk about you type of thing. Yeah. Because I don't think that necessarily is what it is. I think it's more maybe your imagination comes in play with like the places. Because I don't know if you can be in two places at once, like your spirit and your body or whatever. If we're gonna believe in that, because that's like what astral projection kind of does. That's like supposed to separate like your spirit and your body, which is where it's like. You need to be in a safe place when you do it. Like everyone who tells you is like, if you're in astral projection, make sure you're like laying down in a safe place because you need to be able to come back. Okay. Similar
so don't be in a moving truck when you leave your body. Yeah. Because you can't find your body again.
It's like Inception.
Or like Avatar, where like, I mean, Last Airbender or Inception. But
yeah, like you need to be able to come back to your realm.
Aang needs to be able to find his body again.
Yeah. So you better not be in any fights while this is happening. No car chases. Like you gotta just be like chilling in your bed.
Don't be in action movies. Yeah. Okay, so I have to ask you a question that comes up surprisingly a lot on this podcast. do you think that the brain creates consciousness, or do you think the brain receives consciousness from elsewhere?
Oh, like what? Well, how do you mean?
Like, is consciousness something that is manufactured by your brain
Yeah.
and would be then considered just completely a biological emergent phenomenon? Like, your experience of consciousness is just created by your body? Or do you think these are the big two options? There might be different options you could find, but or do you think that consciousness comes in from an outside source, say some dimension or realm of consciousness, and maybe like light waves, it comes from elsewhere, and like light waves, you have an organ in your body that uses them. Your eyes see light and form images, so then your brain would feel consciousness and form your conscious experience. Do you have a feeling towards being like completely mechanistic inside your body, or being some sort of, I mean, kind of more mystical outside of body thing?
I don't know, because I don't even know if any of this is real.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what's
I feel that.
I mean, maybe that's just me overthinking everything, but like part of me thinks that that none of it is consciousness, or like it's just like energy
Okay.
bouncing around and creating a reality, which would make it more an out of body consciousness.
So then that would be like whatever the conscious thing is, that's the thing that exists in this physical world. Is because okay, that's a good third option. Like, the conscious experience exists and the physical world is created by the conscious experience.
Yeah.
Okay. So then this is more like a dream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if we don't understand what dreams are, and they can feel so real, then what's to say that this is not some other type of dream?
Right.
And we are not something else, or we are this, and this is just what it is. But like, if we can create dreams that feel so real, like, what is this? I don't know.
Yeah, that's something I think about sometimes. Like, if we're still dreaming, and if when we go to sleep, that's just a dream within a dream.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And I mean, we couldn't really know until we wake up from this dream that it ever was one. Just like how most of the time, anyway, when you are dreaming, you don't have that awareness that you're dreaming, unless it's lucid dreaming.
Right.
So then, I guess in a way, astral projection would maybe be like lucid dreaming for
it'd be like
this
another
dream
realm of dream.
Right.
Yeah, like you would be in the third dream.
Although, I mean, say like you could do this astral projection thing where you have such control over your mental state that you can separate what your body, what your consciousness created, and you can just move it around this other world that presumably your consciousness created, all of it.
Right.
Shouldn't you then also be able to like manipulate it in other ways, like just change what's there? Like, because lucid dreaming, for instance, like you're dreaming of eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right, and you start to lucid dream, you could change that peanut butter and jelly sandwich into like a table.
Yeah. In an instant. But maybe that's not how this realm of reality works.
Okay.
Maybe because when we dream, maybe things happen a lot quicker. Like that's been proven. Like you could go through like a dream that felt like an hour, and it's like 3 minutes of this life.
Okay.
But what if things do change around us all the time, or we make them change? Maybe we have honed it more in our reality now. This is, again, so outlandish.
Right.
And just very much.
Yeah. Or it could, okay, here's another way of thinking about it. Maybe it could be that, like, if you imagine different levels of you, like different yous in these dream states. So, for instance, perhaps when you're dreaming, you've got the dreamer you, like the perspective of inside the dream. And then you've got the sleeping you, who's like a layer above that. And perhaps when you're lucid dreaming, it's that sleeping you taking control of dreaming you, if that makes any sense. So then it's like being controlled from one layer above in your own consciousness. So maybe that dreaming you
is astral projection.
Well, that dreaming you doesn't know it's dreaming. The sleeping you does.
Yeah.
So then we're no longer asleep. Let's say that reality itself is a dream, and you could change things. Maybe all change that's happening. This maybe I think goes along with what you're saying. We
don't know.
From our perspective, don't realize that. From our, I guess you could say, higher perspective, the sleeper up there, who is us, knows that we're changing things.
Right.
I mean, I think it's possible, but I feel like it's fundamentally unprovable.
Oh yeah, it's like its own religion type of thing where it's just like, here's this other aspect. Maybe we're all dreaming. Like it's like a whole nother form of what is reality. Like, what is existence? Like, oh, we're just all dreaming. Like, it's like, all right, prove me wrong, prove me right. Like, there's no way but it's like that's why those things are interesting, like astral projection, because like, or lucid dreaming, because we don't really know what they are. So again, it like goes into like, all right, well, if we don't know what that is, what are we?
Right.
If we can make things feel so real in our mind, and even in our own reality, like right now, you can make things real by your perspective. Like you can make scenarios in your mind wrong. You can make relationships go wrong, but just by twisting them in your head.
Yeah.
And so like we are creating things just like we do in our dreams. We just do it on more of like a psychological level. And then we can change things over time, object wise, financial things like that. So it's interesting because it's a concept we practice in our dreams all the time, but we do it in reality and don't realize that it's like similar, like it's similar.
Yeah. One question I guess I would have for instance, if real life were a dream, and then we're also dreaming when we go to sleep within the dream already, wouldn't that kind of suggest that when you go to sleep and you're dreaming, that the dreaming you could go to sleep and dream some more? If it's already going down like 3 layers,
right?
Why couldn't it go down more than 3? Like, so has anyone ever had the experience of dreaming in their dream?
I think yeah.
Or
maybe not dreaming in your dream, but sleeping in your dream.
Yeah.
And then maybe in those, you can't receive that information because you're too.
You like fragment your consciousness
back.
one step further. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just
right. That's just pure speculation.
Yeah. But like, what if that would be the case where it's you can? Because I've fallen asleep in my dreams, and then I haven't woken up like right away. I've just been like, I woke up and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember I went to bed a couple hours ago, but it was like half an hour in real life. I'm like, oh shoot, I was sleeping. Like I've had those dreams. I'm sure everybody has where you do your normal routine.
Yeah.
And then you go to bed and you wake up and you do that routine again. You're like, okay. And then you wake up in real life and you're like, I just lived 2 days. Yeah. And I remember sleeping and you wake up kind of like feeling rest. Like I'm like, I slept 8 hours already in this night, but it was in my dream.
Yeah.
And I went to work and I went to school and
I don't know if I have it that far. What happens a lot is in my dreams, I wake up and go about my day.
Yeah.
So then
like brushing your teeth and like eating breakfast.
Or like go to school, go to work or whatever. So then when it's like 30 minutes later and I actually wake up, I'm like, I thought I was at work already and now I'm late.
That's the worst.
Like that happens probably to everyone. But
yeah,
I don't know if I go through my entire day to the point where I go back to sleep in my dream.
I've had that happen. And it's a weird, I've woken up and been like, what the hell? Like, where am I? And I'll like look at my phone and be like, it's this day? It's a Wednesday? But it was a Friday or like something weird.
Yeah, I haven't had it go that far. I don't know if I've necessarily lucid dreamed. There's been moments, especially I remember when I was younger, where I would realize I was dreaming and like take control of it, or maybe I didn't even realize I was dreaming, but I just realized I could control my environment in that dream, and then I would, but then it would only last like a very short time, and then for some reason I would like lose the power. And it sounds like made up and stupid, but what would legitimately happen, at least in my memory, would happen is maybe it was like a dream of me in school and I realized I could control things. So I would just like fly, like kind of glide through like the hallways. And then after a few minutes of doing that, it would like crumble in on itself. And what would happen is those dancing lobsters from the Amanda Show would show up.
Bring in the dancing lobsters.
And I couldn't make them leave. And like that would ruin my dream. Like,
from Judge Trudy.
Yeah. Like they would intrude on my dream. And then like make me stop, like make me stop controlling it.
Right.
And then I feel like I would lose all control of my dream, and there'd just be these lobsters that are just unwanted.
I wonder if flying is a common one, because that's my like biggest one. When I'm dreaming and I know I'm dreaming, I start flying, and I tell myself, "Oh, you're dreaming," and because I'll be doing something mundane, and I'll be like, "I think you're dreaming," which leads to be like trippy situations, because like I'll be like doing something normal, I'm like, "You're dreaming, all right, like fly," and then I'll be like, "Okay." Like I'll be like eating breakfast in my dream, and I'll be like, I think I'm dreaming right now. I think I can fly, and then I'll just like jump out the window and fly, and I'm like, oh, I'm dreaming, thank God. But then it's like it's a while, and I've already told myself you're dreaming, and I'll fly around and like I'll like be doing stuff, and then I'll get to the point where I want to show people, so I'll be doing tricks for them. I'm like, look at me do flips, and like he can fly, I'm like yeah I can. And then I'll wake, like something will happen where like I did like a flip in the wrong direction, and like I fell. And I was like, he can't fly anymore, and then I can't fly anymore.
Yeah. This reminds me of a similar conversation I had for like episode 2 or something with my friend Brian. Have you ever like Skyrim? Morrowind? In Morrowind, within the lore of the game, there is Vivek. He's like this mortal who became a god, and he became a god through realizing that he existed in a dream, and basically he's a god because he is a lucid dreamer,
Right.
in reality. So he can just do whatever he wants.
So he's on the different. He is doing what we were talking about, where he's in a dream,
Yeah,
but he knows it.
he knows it. So he's like you, flying around doing tricks for people, and everyone else is so amazed, and they just don't realize that they're also in a dream.
So it's like me. Oh, right. So I'm like a god in my dream,
Yeah,
but everybody else is like living their normal live dream for that moment.
right. Yeah, and also within that Elder Scrolls video game lore, realizing you're in a dream can go a few ways. You can achieve what's called CHIM, which is what he did, which is when you realize that you have complete control over the universe because it's all just a dream. Or you can, what they call zero sum, which means when you realize that you're not real, this can overwhelm you
Right.
to the point where you blink yourself out of existence.
Yeah. See, I've thought about that multiple times. Not like if you think too much into existence.
Yeah, it stops making any sense.
And then you go crazy.
Yeah, literally.
And then you got the people who jump out of buildings because they think they can fly.
Yeah,
And then they're dead.
right.
But what if somebody did do that and they could fly?
Yeah.
Not saying that but how many people would it take
Right.
for us to for one person to be like, oh, I'm actually in that dream. Like,
I mean, there's no amount of people who could jump out of that building in front of you to prove to you that you aren't in a dream.
Right.
Because they could all just be these NPCs.
but for themselves, like if somebody jumped out
Right.
and started flying, then you'd be like, oh my god, an alien.
Right.
But what if you were actually dreaming too and you could fly?
Yeah.
But it took that level of enlightenment. Not even
Right.
'cause it wouldn't be real. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah. And yeah, so I guess it's I think it's a nice, almost like metaphor for real life in a way, because obviously you don't blink out of existence, or, I mean, perhaps you do, but you probably don't. It'd be more like you take yourself out of existence through killing yourself because you suspect you're in a false reality and you want to get to the real one. So you kill yourself, like Inception, like his wife does.
Right.
She doesn't think the reality she's in is real, so she jumps off the building.
Because they twisted reality so much and so often which would, I think, if that movie was real, that would happen way more than just that one character.
Yeah.
It would take a strong mind to go back and forth into the dream state or another dimension, if you will, and not go crazy.
I think when they kind of get on that a little bit, maybe not going crazy, but like developing dependence and addiction on these things, because when they go to Morocco or whatever in Inception to get the powerful drugs that they need, they go to this like slum basement where everybody is on the Inception drug,
right?
And they're all just they're there basically as long as they possibly can be, because the dream world is preferable to the real world.
It would be. If we could access our dreams like that, I don't think anyone would stay.
Yeah.
I mean, some people would.
Is that a problem with actual lucid dreamers who like in their dreams are lucid? Like, do they just not want to?
You want to stay?
Yeah, you want to just never wake up?
Yeah. I mean, whenever I lucid dream, I will sleep as long as possible. And sometimes I'll be able to wake up and go back to sleep and join that dream right away.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll be able to, I want to sleep.
I've been able to do that, not so much with lucid dreaming, but just with being in a pleasant dream and then just being able to quickly go back to sleep and get back to that dream that's happened. But
which is weird because you think about the dream and then you're back.
Yeah.
And it's happened so many times where I'll be in a plot of something. Like I'll be like a pirate.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh no, and I'll wake up. I'm like, oh shoot, no, and I gotta get the treasure or whatever it is, and I'll go back to sleep and be right back into it.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, here I am. Weird, but it feels super real, even in that moment where I'm falling back into sleep.
Yeah.
I feel like I gotta get back to this. I've got a deadline to me. So it's weird how your mind can make things seem so real.
Yeah. And then the real problem, because this is one reason why I view religious belief as insanity. And literally.
Yeah.
And I know that's not even a good thing to say, because you're not going to win anybody over by saying that.
I like that opinion,
but I mean, I'm not going to make anyone not religious by calling them crazy.
Right.
So it's not like a good argument tool. Yeah. But I mean, it's something I literally think is true. So what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
But I'll explain it this way. So with the CHIM thing, the Elder Scrolls CHIM, CHIM, or becoming the lucid dreamer in reality, the way to do that is to you have to fully accept and acknowledge that you are in a dream, but you can't actually prove that. So it requires making a leap of faith to think that, to just have full conviction and jump out that window and
Yeah.
hope that you're gonna fly, which is crazy. Like
Yeah.
like that's why, like, to have
That's-
complete conviction in a thing without evidence for that thing is
Yeah.
insane.
When you say it like that, it makes so much more sense.
Right.
It's the same as
That's what I meant.
It's the same as like, can't wait to die so I can go to heaven.
Right. Yeah.
That is insanity.
Yeah.
To be like it's not like people, they don't wish for death.
I mean, really,
But it's like, be happy that person died because now they're
Yeah.
in heaven. It's like, wait, what?
I mean, it's exactly the same thing in a way. It's like this reality isn't the real one.
Yeah.
That's the real one up there.
And it's weird
And
how
we're gonna go to it.
It's weird how when we talked earlier, just like 10 minutes ago, we were saying how if you know that this isn't the reality, you would go insane.
Yeah.
And it's weird how that is so accepted as not being insane, going to heaven.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Right.
Or be reincarnated. How is that not insanity?
Right.
Is to be like, this isn't real. Or this isn't what we're supposed to be here for.
This isn't like the authentic, the original reality. This isn't like
if I actually think this, if I was religious and I thought the way that, say, people in our family thought about religion and how it's like, oh, when you die, you go to heaven and it's a better place, I would kill myself.
right. I mean, I guess the reason you don't is because you're also taught that if you do kill yourself, that's a one-way ticket to hell.
Right. And yeah, so that's a counteract the craziness that
Yeah.
would happen if people are like, you'll just go to heaven.
Yeah.
But I feel like I would, in your head, if you think things like that, you're like, oh, no, like, Jesus understands, like, God understands, like, I'm good all my life. Let me just kill myself. Just
Right.
one little oops.
And this gets into one reason why, in a way, I don't know if religious people really are crazy, because in a way, I don't know if they actually believe these things. Because if you did really believe heaven exists, you would be happy to die.
Right.
You wouldn't kill yourself because you don't want to go to hell, but you would be really happy if someone just murdered you right now.
Yeah.
You would be really happy if somebody murdered your child.
Yeah.
Because your child is innocent. They're going to heaven.
Yeah.
You know? Obviously, you're not going to murder your child because you don't yourself want to go to hell.
Right.
But it would be
what if
the
you thought
best
you were
thing
going to
in
hell
the
already?
world.
And then you're like, let me kill, like,
that.
if you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I've done some bad things, because a lot of religion is guilt. Would you become like a killer just to be like, I'm going to bring these people to heaven? And then
Right.
you've got like this like sadistic religious killer. I mean, they have like, that's like a Dexter season where he's like, all these people are going to go to heaven and I'm going to sacrifice them and they're going to live their lives. And it's like, what? But like, that would be what it would be if people lost that grip of reality, which is why, they don't fully believe that.
Yeah, so
Like,
I gotta
you
wonder,
can't-
like, if you are actually like, sad or whatever when somebody you love dies, that kind of tells me a little bit that maybe you don't actually believe heaven is real,
Right.
or else you'd be overjoyed.
Yeah, you would be like, I'm sad they're not here with me right now, but they're in. I mean, people do say that, like, they're in a better place, but I think people would have more conviction about it.
And there are certainly people that exist who have that conviction. There are reports of, for instance, like people who, like they are like Muslims and they do suicide bombings, and then their family gets told of what they did, and their family is like overjoyed because they know that they have gotten their free pass to heaven.
Or what was it? There was like a crime documentary I was watching, and like the wife, the kids were murdered or something like that, like the husband, and the wife was like the prime suspect, and she was very happy about it, like right away. Like it was like a couple of days later, not happy, but she was just like, oh yeah, that's too bad, and like, but like they're in a better place, and it was like went straight to religion, and it was or
I think this sounds familiar to me. Yeah,
I forgot what it was. It was something like that where like the person who you expect to be the most sad about it was like very nonchalant and just like accepting. Yeah. And then they didn't do it, but like all the police officers, like, they killed, this is the person who we should be like prime suspect number one. Yeah. It was like somebody else, but
yeah, I would expect like everyone to act that way if they were fully convinced of their religious beliefs.
Yeah, which this person I guess was.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, my family, they're in a better place. And it's like their whole family was like killed. I'm like, what? Those are like your sons and daughters, and like the mom was like, they're in a better place. Like, could you get out of my face, reporters? And you're like, okay, this person killed them.
Yeah,
but she didn't, or she might have, and she got away with it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess with the thing about like killing other people to send them to heaven, it might depend, because obviously with a lot of really probably all religions, there's this like redemption kind of thing. Like, even if you think you're going to hell, you can always go to heaven. Like,
right.
Especially for like Christianity or like Protestantism, all it takes is belief in God. You don't have to be a good person. Like Catholicism, Catholicism, it's belief and good works. Protestantism, it's not even good works. It's just belief. You can be a bad person and go to heaven as long as you accept Jesus in your heart as your Lord and Savior.
And sometimes some religions, it's not even while you're alive. You go into like the
Oh, like a purgatory
judgment
kind of thing.
Yeah, like you go to judgment and you can repent.
Right. And if you
And
found
it's like-
yourself in judgment, why would you not? If you realize that this is legitimate. And
Oh,
real.
I would repent right away. I'm like,
Why-
I'm so sorry.
Like if you realize
this is real.
God exists and he's this dickbag who's going to send me to
Right.
hell if I don't repent.
So then everyone would go to heaven.
Yeah.
In that theory. I mean, unless you're an idiot. There'd just be
Right.
like a bunch of people like, fuck, I forgot to say sorry.
Right.
And they're just like, no, he asked me if I was sorry, and I said no as a joke, and he sent me to hell. It's just a bunch of comedians in hell, like sarcastic assholes.
Yeah. So I wouldn't expect people who would think of themselves as going to hell to kill people to send them to heaven, because they probably expect that they'll be able to make it to heaven anyway. Like, really, what religious person believes they're going to hell? Like zero.
Oh, none.
They
Which
all
is the problem.
think they're going to heaven.
Yeah. They all are like, I've
They're
sinned,
all good
but it's
people
fine.
in their own mind.
Yeah.
And, that's what we were talking about earlier with like nobody's the villain in their own story kind of thing. Like everybody thinks of themselves as being good,
Yeah.
even if they're not. But then there's another way with the killing people thing is, it seems to me, if you did accept all of these beliefs, that it would be very noble of you to send yourself to hell in order to send other people to heaven. Because think of it this way.
Just kamikaze bombers everywhere.
Right. Think of it this way, though, because if you believe that there are many people who like get corrupted away by Satan away from faith, like people who were Christian and turn atheist or whatever, or people who like fornicate or,
Right.
give up their sexual purity because everyone's so obsessed with that. They do whatever that's going to make them go to hell. If you kill them before they do that thing, for instance, when they're a baby, or a small child or whatever
Right.
it is, if you kill them before that time, they're going to heaven because they didn't commit these sins against God.
Right.
So wouldn't it be the most noble thing you could do to sacrifice
Kill
yourself?
babies.
Right,
Oh.
exactly. Sacrifice yourself, because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to kill all these people, send them right to heaven, and yes, I'm going to go to hell. Obviously, that's bad for me, but it's like...
but all those lives.
I know, right.
That's so great.
So if
Great
you really
for them.
believe these things, why would you not do that?
Right. So all these extreme pro-lifers should be the opposite.
Yeah.
They just be going there as Unabombers. No.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, then the self-interest trumps out. Like, you want to go to heaven more than you want other people to go to heaven.
Yeah, it's always, I mean, all those things are going to be purely rooted. Most things in our lives are rooted in like a selfish, self-interest. I mean, it has to be. Otherwise, you would. People who lose self-interest kill themselves, or just
kill themselves through like the
any means.
The Will Smith 8 pounds thing. Like
Right.
so altruistic that you give up all your organs to
Right.
save other people.
Which almost seems like some type of inflated ego too. It's like, okay, like
Oh, like, yeah, you have a
does he,
savior
like,
complex.
Doesn't he like
kind
want
of
them
thing.
to know too? He like gives them little hints, or like he
I don't
meets
know.
them.
I actually
or
haven't
something.
seen that movie, but I know the plot.
I
I
think
mean,
he-
I know the basic.
I think he
premise.
like meets them, or he writes something for him. So it's like it's almost like some 13
he
reasons
wants to be
why type
known.
of shit, like where it's like, I did this to you.
Yeah.
That organ inside of you, it's mine,
Right.
and you should always know that. And you're welcome.
Yeah.
Like, no one asked, but okay, thank you.
Right. But yeah,
But
basically,
he's
if you
like,
get to
it's
the...
because I actually killed. He hit somebody in a car. That's
he
how
feels
it is, right?
guilt about it, so he wants to
He kills
make
like
up for
8
that.
people.
Oh, he has to even out the balance.
Yeah, so then he goes and like donates parts of him to
Yeah.
like
Save 8
people who are in that circle of the people he killed, something like that.
Oh, okay.
It's very like a very 2000s like 5 convoluted plot that like,
Yeah.
and they flesh it out almost like a thriller a little bit, but not really.
Thriller, but the dramatic thriller moments are him ripping out his own kidney in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did this for Gloria, who I killed in a semi truck. No.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, if you go too far to the altruistic side of things, you can, it's to your own self-detriment, which, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's kind of stupidly altruistic. If you're wisely altruistic, you'll realize that you need to maintain your own health to help other people. But, like, you could go, like, I don't know,
No.
not taking care of yourself
But, like, who
in
does-
order to help other people.
But in the same way, like, how does that help anybody else? If you're not taking care of yourself,
Yeah.
how is that helpful then? Everybody's just worrying about you now, and then now you're like the center of attention because everybody's like, oh, this
Yeah.
poor person.
You're a burden on other people, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then their whole life is like, oh no, I got to take care of them because that's the right thing to do.
They've got
They're
some
like,
complex
no,
where they think
leave
they're
me
some
to
savior.
die.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say that religious belief is like insanity. It's
I
you
mean,
literally have to take that leap of faith, which there is no reason to do it. You just have to believe that reality is false,
right.
or at least false adjacent.
Well, I mean, that's why when I included it in my topic discussions of interest, and I threw in like religion and like
Modern day
nationalism,
nationalism,
yeah,
brainwashing.
because those are in my head
Connected.
to reality and perception. because no one, like, everyone's reality is different, and that it's interesting how religion tries to make everyone have the same reality,
Yeah.
but it never works. Like, no one, even in like the same church, those people, everyone's doing different things and living different lives and thinking everyone else in that room is more of a sinner than they are.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Or like, and then it just like creates this little like ecosystem of just like, in my opinion, just pure terror of just people who have like this perception of that they are better than the world because they are religious, or like
It's
not
like
better,
self-righteous, or like,
yeah, self-righteous and more knowing because they accepted something that,
yeah, they know the true
yeah,
state of reality,
which is
how things really are.
I mean, we see that in our family more than my friends in LA, at least, seeing their families like this. Yeah, self-righteous attitude of religion where it's like, oh, I accepted this being into my life, so I know more than you. And it's like, or I read the Bible, so therefore I know more about reality. And it's like those two things are completely separate.
Yeah.
The Bible and reality and this being and knowledge are so separate from each other.
Yeah.
Accepting some otherworldly or unknown entity into your life and acknowledging that as truth is not knowledge.
Right.
That doesn't make you smarter or better than anybody else. Reading a book and interpreting any way you want it and switching the interpretations, and like even just any book, you take your own interpretations because your perspective is different. Does not make you more knowledgeable or more righteous.
Yeah.
But people love to think that is something that gives them more power.
Yeah, like I wonder if there's even any way at all to do what we were talking about at the beginning of making everyone have, like, making isn't a good word, but getting to a state where everyone has the same worldview, I guess, or the same
Right.
idea of reality. Because yeah, religion tries to do it, and that's through force, through childhood indoctrination,
Like national conquests and
right? Especially
like,
earlier.
yeah. Oh, even still, like I mean, they do like Bible outreach in like Asia and like
missionary.
Missionary work in Africa and South America, and it's like, why?
Yeah, it's like you've got that
those places don't need a church there. Like,
ulterior
maybe they
motive.
need some jobs.
You're trying to build
like,
them houses, but also like spread your.
Yeah, it's like, oh, here's houses in a church, and like, oh, the church is great. Come to our church. Yeah, it's like, how would just like put some jobs and like resources available to, these people in need or whatever. Like,
and the one thing that just is probably the worst, and I should really become illegal, but I don't know how it could feasibly even be illegal, is the childhood indoctrination thing. Like, your whole system relies on making your adherents have as many children as possible, and then raising those children up in the system of belief before they can even do their own mental logic and critical thinking. Yeah. So like they believe this before they even know how to know things.
Yeah. So now they're praying to a being, asking for good grades or healthy relationships with their family or like presents they want for Christmas or things like that. And it's like they're praying to this being before they know if it's real or not, before they can even question if it's real or not. Yeah. Before they can question what is reality, they are being told this is reality. Yeah. And I think it's damaging to like society and just to like progress. Yeah. Is to tell people here is something to believe in it. I think religion does play a good part in some people's lives. Like I do think it gives people hope and it gives people things to look forward to, and maybe even some like moral guidelines if people lack that. I'm not sure how or why, but I'm also coming from a place where we grew up religious, so I don't know. I mean, I'm hopeful that I would have the similar morals, but
I mean, what I would say quickly to those things, just generally speaking, is that I've said that a lot in this podcast generally. Anyway, what I would say to that is that even if religion can, in some people's lives, play those roles of giving people like hope or moral guidelines, I think there is always an alternative source for those things, where it's not like we need to rely upon religion for those.
Yeah, but I think as a parent or like a guardian or like a busy individual with children or whatever, or just people who like you're looking after, I think that's an easy solution. Right. Is to just bring them to church and be like, here's things. It's free childcare. Free. They're like, here's things that are right and wrong, and if it's wrong, you're gonna burn in hell. Yeah. Why? You're gonna burn in hell. Do you want to burn in hell, child? Like, no. Okay, then do these things. It's like easy. Like, you can't like tell like a 5-year, or you can't like rationalize a 5-year-old like, oh, why are these things bad? Be like, well, in society, if you do these things, like these
They'll
are the
negatively affect other
consequences.
people, and they won't be very
yeah.
happy. And how would you feel if you were unhappy? Like,
Right, because
you can't explain that.
you can't explain like, oh well, if you killed somebody like 5-year-old, like then you can explain it. It just takes a little bit more work and a little bit more like knowledge about like and empathy and things like that. Whereas
it's just easier to give commands than it is to give rational.
You'll go to hell.
Explanation.
That's
rationale.
like the easiest negative consequence you can imagine.
Yeah.
It's just you'll go to hell. What? Doesn't like, oh no, what, jail? What's that? Hell. Like you're like, what is that? I don't know. Think about the worst place in your mind.
Yep.
Everyone's gonna have a different thing of like what hell is, and it's like, all right, it's fiery, and the child's like, oh my god, all right, never mind, I can't do that.
So I wonder though if at least in my mind right now, it seems like the best way to get to that, I guess, probably unrealistic, never going to be achieved, but still worth going after utopian state where everybody realizes the same things, is probably through like maybe freedom of speech is the only way there, because you're not forcing anybody to, you're not teaching people things before they even learn how to learn. You're just allowing free conversation so that people can be exposed by better arguments and better logic.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like it's probably never even going to get there, but that's really the only hope for changing people's minds in a healthy way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it'll get to that, what we were talking about in the very beginning. That was off topic completely. I just like brought it up real quick. Like, but like this like level of like, yeah, like societal nirvana of like everyone is one mind. I think the biggest thing that would have to come in play is like finances. Like you'd have to eliminate fear of survival before anything else. So everyone have to just be like comfortably living and feeling.
UBI.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
But yeah, like everyone have to be feeling like comfortable
equally
and secure and cared after and whatnot. So like you'd have to give everybody livable wages that would, or just no wages.
Right. No.
In some type of like, everyone have to be like the same.
No labor economy.
Yeah. Because then after everyone's the same and all your survival things are met and all of your materialistic needs are met, then you're able to really explore the mind and what is the most
like
important
Maslow's
thing.
hierarchy of needs.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is so far off, and honestly,
maybe unachievable.
Unachievable.
Like I was saying when we were talking about the Purge thing, or like equalizing everyone is probably not a doable task.
Because it would just circle right back and be like, oh well, there's always gonna be some type of resource.
Yeah. Or also maybe not even a good task. Like, would it be a good thing for there to be no difference in value at all?
Yeah, probably not for like the level, like the amount of society and amount of people we have. I think that'd be too far off. Like I'm not talking like a Thanos snap or anything, but there would have to be like, it would have to be small little civilizations would be able to get like to be able to do it.
Right.
But then you have like competition. It would have to be like everyone's living their own world, but there's like a neighborhood of 1,000 people and it's like sectioned off and like another 1,000 people, and it's like, all right, they all live their lives in a little utopia.
Yeah, but then if they're all sequestered from each other, how would they have the same ideas about the world? It would be like every single commune or every single little tiny city is its own like reality bubble where they believe different things. And there's like harmony within there, but if they ever interacted, they'd kill each other. Which is, I mean, kind of how it was.
No, then everyone has the same
microchip
education.
Installed.
The same education coming from one person, me, who would be the overseer of society. Yeah. They call me the overseer. Not president or
that doesn't sound like a villain title.
It's not.
Overseer.
The overseer. Capital THE. Overseer.
Yeah.
And I have a large tower in like the middle of nothing that says the overseer, and it strikes lightning all the time. I don't know. I gotta get that fixed, but
this sounds like something I just watched, but I won't spoil it for you.
Well, I know what you just watched because you just told me. Oh.
No, I watched many things recently.
Oh, okay. But I know what name that I just said, which I know is a name of a character in a certain franchise.
What, the Overseer?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
The Watcher? What am I talking about? They don't do anything.
Oh.
It's in comic books, right?
Okay. It's semi-related to that.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. Okay, because I know who they cast as that role. I'm like, that role's coming up? Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, spoilers.
A lot of people know comics.
That's true.
I don't even know them. I just Google them before something comes out.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about WandaVision.
No. I don't think we can get through any more of these topics in the time.
The time allotted.
Yeah.
The time our sponsors, Brita, gave us.
Right. They only paid us for, this specific amount of minutes.
How long has it been?
Probably 2.5 hours.
Oh wow, okay, that's a long
Yeah. That'll probably be the end of it.
That's the
That's the
end of
abrupt
that.
ending.
I mean, we started abrupt. We might as well end abrupt.
Yeah. Do you have any parting thoughts though? One thing I like to leave on a lot of the time is some sort of actionable recommendation from whoever the guest is, which I guess is you, in case there's any question.
Recommendation towards
book or movie or TV show that you maybe really like and think the audience would like as well, or if they liked this conversation maybe, or it doesn't even have to do with this conversation, just something that a piece of who you are that you think the audience should experience.
If you liked this, we talked about so many things. I mean, if you like reality and horror, I'd highly recommend Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, but I feel like a lot of people have seen that already. But that's something that I gravitate towards. They struggle with reality and horror a lot. Okay. That's the show touches on a lot of those topics of what is real and what are dreams. Maybe this whole thing was actually just sponsored by that show. Now that I think about it, it's very much what that show is.
I probably will watch it eventually.
And yeah, book-wise, it's this little book series called Harry Potter. Yeah. No, God, I don't even know. What am I? I'm reading a lot of random things. I recently read Call Me by Your Name, like a couple months ago. The movie with like Timothy Chalamet and the Cannibal Man.
Yeah.
It's so sad. If you like a good cry, like a cry for days, and just like not even a sad cry, just like oh my God, the world is rough cry. Yeah. Read that. It's a lot different than the movie as far as the reason to cry. The movie is a little just depressing and sad, but the book is like 4 chapters of just like agonizing sadness.
The book is 4 chapters, or
no, the
4 chapters.
4 chapters worth of just the ending. Like expands onto the sad and dreadful ending of the movie. So if you like horror and crying, those are my 2 recommendations.
Okay. Yeah, neither of those things are things that I've watched or read, but yeah, I keep on getting The Haunting of Hill House recommended to me.
It's a good one.
Not generally a fan of horror, but I probably should watch it anyway. And if it's more like psychological horror than it is like jump scare horror, then I'll probably like it.
Right. I tend to read more sad books. Like every book I read, I want to cry. I don't know why. And then I like to watch horror, but I think it's because I go about my life and I laugh a lot during my day, and I like to have fun with my days. So I feel like my days are comedy, and then my viewing is always sad and horror.
Yeah, you're seeking in your entertainment that which you don't have enough of in your life.
Yeah. Not enough people make me cry, and not enough people make me scared. So I need better friends.
Friends that'll stab you every once in a while.
Just once in a while. Just a mere flesh wound would be fine.
Or an emotional stabbing.
Yeah. No, none of those.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for being on this episode of the podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode or any of my other episodes, please consider, sharing it with a friend, or maybe even paying if you have the money and you love me that much, which I'd be surprised if you did.
I did sponsor this.
I know.
podcast.
I didn't even say that you are a sponsor of this podcast.
I'm a sponsor. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. This was made possible by Brad Allen.
By viewers like you.
That is true.
I paid my way to be for my brother to talk to me. This is crazy.
That is, a little bit strange when you put it that way. There is at least 2 viewers like you that make this channel, or not channel, podcast.
But we're cut for time, so we can't name them right now.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, if you like this, share it with a friend, or if you're watching it on a place like YouTube, give it a like. If you're listening on a place like Apple Podcasts, give it a rating or a review. That'd be good. Goodbye.
Adios for our bilingual listeners.